I call the Hillsboro School District work session to order. Thank you everyone for joining us. Little bonus meeting for the month of December. A little extra business to conduct. This is a work session, not a special session. We had time to post it. So our work session, for those of you who may not normally be with us or conducted upstairs, you're not in a board meeting, a little less formal. With designed to have discussions on topics, which is what we will exactly be doing tonight. So Rose and I have been consulting with our legal experts about how we conduct things, and we're very certain that this is how we should be doing. So with that, I will do a little bit, and yes, the idea is to be as transparent as possible throughout the entire process. There'll be some things that we need to conduct in executive session. I think whichever search firm we decide to go with will have some parameters that they normally use. Hopefully we will, they will be familiar with Oregon law as well. So we'll do some things in executive session, but we'll also try to be as transparent as possible, as this board often considers that a priority. You may notice that the chair to my right that is normally occupied is not today. I will say that although Mike is not here, we do have cabinet, some available online, some available here. Our legal team has said it's, of course we have access to cabinet. Of course, these are things that this is the kind of thing. It's, maybe would not be the best idea to have the HR team choose the next superintendent, but they are experienced HR professionals. So we always rely on cabinet for their expertise and input, and we should feel free to continue to do that as we conduct this search process. Mike, our current superintendent, does have a relationship with one of the search firms that we're considering tonight, so we thought it was best that he just sit this out. Although he will also be a tremendous resource as we consider our new superintendent as well. So just because he's not here tonight, don't assume that it's because we legally can't or whatever. It's just a weird little situation where he's not here tonight, and we will still be relying on cabinet and the superintendent for their input. The irony is not lost on me that we have a building full of, maybe not full, but a lot of HR professionals in our building, and even if it's not inappropriate, it would be maybe a little bit weird for them to choose their new boss, but that the fact that the choice for the new superintendent comes down to 7 people who essentially have no formal training in HR, that irony is not lost on me. So that's why we are here tonight, is to try to hire a search firm that is good at that to help us through this process. We have 4 firms tonight who responded to it. So 4, it wasn't clear before, as we discussed last time. We had 5, we're going to cut to 3. If we had 4, we talked about 4. We had 4 respond. We'll be talking with all 4 tonight. The order in which they are presented was randomized. So to not give anyone any special preferential treatment. At the conclusion of the interviews tonight, at the conclusion of each interview section, the firms will have 15 or so minutes to present. At the conclusion of each presentation, we will have a chance to ask questions. Then we'll transition to the next presentation. At the end of all of the presentations, we will have a discussion and hopefully reach a conclusion. We'll all be in a position where we feel like we can vote to pass the motion. There is a standalone motion in your agenda. Yeah, there's a standalone motion. So we will be hopefully in a position to choose a firm at the end of this evening. And if we do that, it keeps us on our timeline where we will begin working in earnest with that firm as a board at our January 10th work session, the next scheduled meeting that we have on the calendar. I think Rose, Mike, and I will probably have discussed with them in between to get everything set up, but we will begin in earnest on the 10th. So with that, does any member of cabinet or board member have a question about our process or what our intentions are for tonight or where we're at? All right. First up, you are here in person. You guys want to come up to the table to the reserved area there? We have a presentation call up for people online. We all have it on our drive on my computer as well.
So,
Jason, you guys want to introduce yourselves?
yes, thank you for that. Sure. My name is Stephen Louder. I'm a retired superintendent, teacher, principal. Was a superintendent for over 30 years. I was superintendent of Tiger Walton School District for a while, and now I'm retired and live in Vancouver. And
I'm Doug Nelson. I'm also a retired superintendent. I retired from the Bendel Pines School District, and I was 11 years superintendent in Pullman, Washington. I'm currently live in the Dalles, and so I'm an Oregon back. And one of the other things is I have been a member of 2 different school boards, High Desert ESD board, and now I'm on the Columbia Gorge ESD board. While I was on the High Desert ESD board, I was fortunate enough to be selected as the Oregon School Boards Association president. So I served in 2016 as the OSBA president, enabling me to have contacts statewide.
I'm Gustavo Valdera, superintendent currently at the Bee Region School District right across the way, and 19-year employee here in Hillsboro. So I'm very invested in terms of what you do. And my muscle memory coming to the district office is still there. I am president of the National Association of Latino School Administrators, founder of the Oregon Latino School Administrator Association 19 years ago. And again, a 19-year employee of Hillsboro. I worked with many of your central office people around the table and online. Hi, Audrey. So, again, just pleasure to be here and hope to be able to help you in this process.
And we have one more online.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Can everybody hear me okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mark. My name is Maureen Wolf, and I've certainly had the pleasure to meet most of you and to work extensively with Mark and Erica around advocacy for K-12 public ed in Washington County. I come this evening with the school board lens. I'm new to the McPherson-Jacobson team, but certainly not to the search process. I served 12 years at Tiger-Tualatin School District, placed 2 permanent superintendents, 1 interim, and I've also worked with Doug actually on the executive search for the Oregon School Boards Association, as well as placing the executive director at the Teacher Standards and Practices Commission. So excited, have tremendous respect for all the work that Mike has done in the district. So I know the seriousness and the commitment of this process and what that means to you all. So thank you for your time and this opportunity.
great. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Really appreciate it. So my history runs from tiny districts of K-8s of 110 kids to my last district of 38,000 kids in the Central Valley of California. So I have a broad and unique experience. I've been doing the searches since 2014. Most recently done Issaquah and Kent, did Camas and Vancouver. And so it's been a busy few years, but we want to thank you for this. This is a mission-driven piece. We don't do this for the money. We do this because it's so important to the communities, to the children. We've all dedicated our lives, and you have as well, to benefiting the communities and the children. And that's what this is about. We're here to help provide you the best candidates, the best fit we possibly can, because we know that leadership matters when it comes to educating students and leading the district. Next slide, please. Of course, this is you. Thank you. Next slide. And that's us. So next slide. Yeah. So we're one of the top 3 leading national firms around the country. We've done 950 successful searches, impacted somewhere around 300,000 students. We have a national network of experienced consultants, so 130 of us like this around the country, and Maureen, retired school board members or current school board members. So we have a lot of access to a lot of people around not only the nation, but around Washington and, of course, Oregon. There are 12 of us in the Northwest. The thing about our process, it's about fit, and we're so confident in our process. 85% of the people that have been placed in this process are still in their position after 5 years, and 60% are still in the position after 10 years. So that to us means a lot. We find people that are the fit that come and stay to do long work for the communities. Next slide, please.
Well, and I think Hillsboro has benefited from the long tenure of Mike.
Yes.
The stability of leadership has really been enabled Hillsboro to accelerate and to do really good work.
Next slide.
So this was mine. And, you know, Steve already talked about the organization being mission driven. And I think that you'll find the values and the belief system of this firm aligns quite a bit with Hillsboro. I'm certain that you all became board members because you understand that knowledge is power and that every child has the right or should have the right to access a quality education. I believe that, as Steve has already said, success starts with leadership, and having a mission and finding quality leadership that really drives forward achievement in your district is critical. I was doing some research on Hillsboro to learn a little bit more about your organization, and I really appreciated in your planning and your agreements and your commitments to your community that says in Hillsboro, we are connected to our community culture and careers. And I personally have witnessed the work that you all have done to make those realities. You meet with your community where they are. You've implemented amazing career opportunities, whether those are internships or other extensions from that. And I know that this all matters to you. So I think you'll find that our belief system and our values align very much with what you're hoping to accomplish through this search. So thank you.
Next slide, please.
That's me. So our company does, we place talent where there's a fit. We place talent where there's a fit. And we work with you as a board to make sure that we go out there and seek the best talent and is a right match for Hillsboro. Again, Mike hired me as an assistant principal when he was, I believe, in his second year as a principal at Pointer Middle School. So I have deep roots in the system. I know the system pretty well, and I know the stability of the cabinet has made a huge difference for this organization. I personally know that because I spent 20 years here. And I think our job is to find the right people that can come in, the right person that can come in and be the best match for you as a board and for you as an overall district. Again, we just go out and try to do the best we can to find as many people that fit your wants. And as Steve said earlier, our superintendents stay 85%. Past 5 years, when I rated 60 over 10, which is pretty incredible right now. In the state of Oregon, the last 3 years, there's 197 districts in Oregon. There's 100 new superintendents the last 3 years. So there is a lot of vacancies. And again, but our folks do stay because we do have the right fit with the school district.
And our protocols work to bring those good candidates to you, but our protocols aren't locked in stone. They're adaptable to what you as a board want. This is your search. And as it says, we don't hire the superintendent, you do, but we adapt to what you want.
Next slide, please.
We talked about, we have 130 consultants nationwide. These happen to be the 12 in the Northwest. You can see who else the Oregon consultants are in your in the proposal, which is in your packet that we handed you. There is a disclaimer. Mike will have nothing to do with this search. That's the ethical thing to do to make sure he's not involved. And our consultants in Washington will use the consultants in Washington to help with recruiting talents in that state, and as well as in reference checking, as we will with all of our other consultants. But we know that this will be a very attractive position for people in the Pacific Northwest. Next slide.
Next slide, please.
These are the searches that we've done in Oregon recently. You can see that starting about a few years ago, we started really ramping up our services here in the state of Oregon. And have done several searches these last few years here. As Steve, but I want to mention this. Steve led 3 very important searches last year: Vancouver, Issaquah, and Kent. Issaquah and Kent have very similar characteristics to Hillsboro. They're both suburban districts to Seattle. I was a principal in Kent, and the characteristics of Kent are in many ways are similar to the characteristics of Hillsboro. So Steve led those searches has that experience in bringing really good, diverse candidates to both of those, to all 3 of those districts, particularly Issaquah and Kent.
Yes. Next slide, please.
Thank you. Gus and I are going to do this slide together. And so I just wanted to kick it off. This really talks about diversity of placements. And I know, I believe that we all really want to see our leadership reflect that of our community and especially our students. So this shows the importance that it is for McPherson and Jacobson and this team to provide an opportunity for you to interview all sorts of candidates that meet your needs and goals defined. That obviously you'll start working on that in January. And I'm certain that you've all been thinking about that as you've been working to this process. We all know, I'm sure that we're reminded of those reports. Gus mentioned the amount of new superintendents in Oregon. We're also very aware of the challenges that we have had in this state around retaining our superintendents of color, are female superintendents. And I think that all 3, Steve, Doug, and Gus, have addressed the importance of the fit and how much of a priority this organization will place in ensuring that that is a strong fit for Hillsboro. And I will say 4 years ago, Gus was critical in placing Tigard Tualatin by referring Dr. Sue Reiki-Smith as our first female superintendent at TTSD. So with that, I would like to transition to Gus. I think as a national superintendent of the year, he has built quite a network of connections and will be a great opportunity for you to really think through the types of candidates you'd like to speak with. But Gus, I'll hand it off to you.
Great. So our goal is to provide you the best candidate pool and our extensive network of superintendents from across the nation. You know, my opportunity and what my value add is as president of the National Association for Latino Administrators, and again, working closely with NAPSI and LaTanya Goffney, their president, who I was just with today, but also on the West Coast with CALSA, which I was also on their board, and the newly created a couple of years ago, WALAS, which is the Washington Association for Latino Administrators, and their president, Victor Rivera, who's also an Oregon person for a while. So just trying to get you the right pool of people so that you as a board can, again, make the most critical decision I think you have as a board is hiring your leader. So, and our job is to get you the right pool from just not only the West Coast, but also looking internally and regionally. I think there's a lot of talent regionally that could be ready for the next level, and just understanding that our job is to bring you that pool of candidates. But again, also as McPherson Jacobson has placed 1/3 of 1/3 female, which was the last 10 years. Nationally, 27% of superintendents are female nationally, 27% nationally. And that's just that stat has been it's been kind of hot and cold lately, but it's roughly 27%. So our job is to not only get diverse leaders, but also representation in the seat. So I think we've done a nice job with that, and we'll do what we can to get you as diverse a pool that we can, both locally and nationally.
And last year in New York,
Can I have a time check, please? I have about 3 or 4 minutes. Is that right?
I wasn't keeping track.
Oh, okay, good. That's
and of the searches we did in Oregon last year, about 60% were of the successful candidates were female.
great. Next slide, please.
Is your definition of successful candidate meaning they were hired?
I'm sorry, yes, the ones that that the boards hired, yes. I'm sorry,
If
yes.
the board's higher, we only present slate candidates. Thank you very much for that question. So the investment, the base fee of this search is $22,500, not to exceed $31,050, and that would include things like travel and other things. Don't think it's going to be anything near that because we all live fairly close to the district that we were lucky enough to be awarded the search. And I'm going to kind of briefly go through. The fees are all very similar for all the companies. I think our claim to fame is the fact that people come and stay, the national reach, the fact that we really scrub down our candidates. We do not have a pool of candidates that we present to you. We find the candidates that fit your characteristics and qualities and needs. That's what's unique about us. We have 5 phases. We talk about what are the characteristics the board and community would like to see in the next superintendent. We go out and seek and recruit those candidates, and we go through those. The advertising, pretty straightforward, 30 days in the American Association of School Administrators, 30 days in Top Jobs, 30 days in NAPSE, 6 weeks in ALS, posting on OSBA and COSA, 3 consecutive days of in-person educational partner meetings. So we'll be here in the district 3 days talking to your staff, your students, your community, your elected officials, whoever are important to the district and the board that they want to hear from to be part of this process. Boards normally want to hear from all voices, as many voices as possible, and that's partly our job. We'll also do Zoom interviews and opportunities for people to reply to the same questions online. We'll get all that data. We'll get our summaries. You'll see as much of the information as possible. Okay, I think that's probably it. Next slide, please.
And I think one of the things is the position we posted on our website, and we have lots of people who have registered to with us to check job openings. And our website, we're told, gets something like 250,000 hits a month. So we know people nationally are looking to our firm for open positions.
And then we push out emails to people who fit the profile as well. Recently, we just pushed out 1,200 emails to advertise a position for another district. So, and that's pretty common. But those are the 5 phases. They're in your packets. I don't want to spend the time going over something to look at.
I think it's important to know, you'll see our faces on phase 1 and phase 4. Phase 2 and 3 may appear we disappear, but that's when we're really doing the work of recruiting and reference checking and meeting with your community members. And then we'll be back in phase 4 with lots of information and presentation of top candidates who will also have done an online interview that you will see prior to your selection.
And you'll have my cell phone number. You can get a hold of me anytime. After being a superintendent for 35 years, I know that Sundays are not sacred to superintendents and their need to answer questions of school board members. This is your team. These are the people that you'll be working with. So we're here for you, and for as long as you need us. If the search, which almost never happens, wasn't successful, we would come back and be here again and work with you until you found the right fit person. Next slide, please.
This is a proposed sample timeline. There's one in your packet. If we're selected, we're ready to meet with you January 10th and to start the process. Usually it takes 2.5 to 3 months from start to finish to make sure we get through everything. And we think that we could be able to post a position and have it closed late February, and then going through the process of interviews in March, and then either selection late March, early April. Next slide. One of the things that we think is important is to maintain good communications and to have those few people to help make sure things move along. We usually like to have one member of the board, usually the board chair, that through which all communications are channeled. And then we have a person who's called a point of contact, and we're guessing that may be Rose. It's the person who assists the board, and we have a complete packet, and you can see on pages 12 to 14 who's responsible for what. Maintaining this process really ensures the fidelity of the process so that we do have a successful search.
There's a lot of sample information in the point of contact files. We can provide sample email, sample announcements, et cetera, et cetera. So, next slide, please.
goes out again. Just want to make sure that, to recap, that our superintendents do stay. It's about the match with the values of the community. We are involved with a lot of partners trying to get you the best candidate. We do have a guarantee that our superintendents stay for 2 years. We do it at cost in terms of just our regular just expenses. And also we price match our competitors as well for the work if the work's comparable for similar work.
Our protocols work. Yeah, the process works. It's been working well for many years. Next slide, please. So we've talked about this. We're mission driven. We believe that students are entitled to a high quality education, and it's all about good leadership that comes and stays and builds programs and continues good work that's here. You know that Mike has built great programs for this district and this community. And clearly the person coming in is a high bar, and they have to build upon what he's done and move forward. We understand and respect the uniqueness of each community, each district. We don't claim that we have a process that's the only way to do it. If you want to change the process in any way, shape, or form, as your obligation, we will work with that, because this is your search, this is not our search. We do have a protocol that works well, but this is your search. We do believe in transparency. We think that it should be open, and you should have input from your staff, your students, from your community, from your elected officials, because you want to hear their voice. It is board's legal responsibility to make the decision, but you want to hear from them. We make sure that those individuals, those groups, do not ever think that they could vote for or select or rank the superintendent. They get to give strengths and weaknesses for the board's deliberation. That's a very important piece of our process. Anything else, folks? Maureen? Okay.
I think that was a great summary.
And just say, we'd really like to work with you. That's probably the most important thing.
In summary, I'm incredibly invested in this district. Personally, 13 years ago, I thought I'd be at some point in time sitting across the table from the board, asking for the position myself, but I'm in a neighboring district and wish nothing but success for Hillsboro, because you have done an incredibly just a powerful job of driving the education systems across the state as a leader. So I'm incredibly invested in your as leader.
Try to respect that 15-minute time. I think we've gone past it, but I apologize for that.
All right, now is the time for discussion. Does any board member have questions that they've saved up and are ready to ask? Lisa?
Okay, hello. Well, thank you. Really appreciate and pampering all the great information that you all presented. I guess the biggest question that I had that was not answered as you went, which you did answer most of them, so kudos. We're the fourth largest school district in Oregon, a pretty big school district, and so many of the other districts in Oregon that you've worked with are smaller. I think the closest was Bend, about half our size.
We worked with
Worked with the boards to do a
Oh,
search.
no, Canton is
Well, in Oregon, I think.
Oh.
Yeah, specific to our state. So I guess my question is, how would the process be different for a district like ours than some of the other districts you've worked with in Oregon?
we were very similar to Canton Isabel.
Okay.
It's the process works for districts of 1,000 or 30,000. It really depends on the number of meetings, the number of outreach sessions that we'd like to have. So the process is fungible for small districts or large districts, and it works with across the nation with some very large districts. And Issaquah and Kent are really very similar. They're really not different than this one. It's just a different state. But we've all worked in different states. I've worked in Oregon, I've worked in California, they've worked in Washington and Oregon as well. So we're very familiar with the requirements.
Bend Lapine is now the 5th largest district in it. It is.
They're not going to catch us.
When I was superintendent, we were always trying to chase. First, we hit North Clackamas and Eugene, and then we were chasing Hillsboro. So
They're going to run out of water before they catch you.
that's good. Yeah.
Anybody else have other questions? Nancy?
I am phenomenally encouraged by your commitment to our community. However, I am concerned about the competitive part. So for example, I need to know how many of our other neighboring entities, I hope nobody is looking for a candidate right now because,
Salem Kaiser is about 2 months ahead of us.
wow.
Yeah, that's one, right? That's one person.
Okay, there's only one. I'm
Yeah.
sure there's no others.
So here's the issue about competitiveness is, and as Gustavo said, this is a very good position. This is a great place to live. This is a great place to work. There's a long history of stability. This is going to be a premier position. You're going to have people who want to be here and really apply. I don't think you're going to have to worry about that competitiveness piece. I really don't. It's good that you do, but I think you're going to be fine. And let's just assume the worst, and hope for the best and plan for the worst. Let's assume you get to the end of the process and go, we don't like any of these people. Then we're going to come back in the fall and work with you, just like tonight. And we'll continue to work with you until we find the right person. We'll even help with finding an interim if that is need be. I don't think that's going to happen, but in a worst case scenario, we're here for the long haul and we're dedicated to making sure we can find the right fit.
Thank you. One other question. You did mention that what I did not see in these materials were the contract. Of course, I know that's not there. However, you mentioned an estimate of cost from 21 to 32, which I thought was actually kind of low. And that made me think that, okay, is it low? And
It is.
why?
Well, we don't do this for the money. I know that sounds terrible, but we do this because it's important and we want to do the work. I was 71 yesterday. I do this because it's important to me. It's important to make a difference every day. And I want to be able to do that as long as I can. It's not about the money. It's about making a difference and being able to interact with students and staff and board members and communities to find the right fit. That's where I get my payment.
And we want to respect the limited resources that school districts have and want to make sure that we're priced competitively. We've all been through those ups and downs right now. We may be up, but we may be going down. We want to respect that as stewards of your community's resources, you want to make sure that you're getting the best value for your dollar. And we believe we bring a great value for that dollar.
You do? But if you really want to pay us double, that would be fun. I don't think so.
Mention it's not about the money twice, so I appreciate the pro bono offer. Yeah, pretty fine. Erica, you had some questions?
Yeah, I think back to like the business model of this, the firm, like Pearson. So I'm assuming that you're all local consultants, but it's the national, right? So when I was looking at the materials and a lot of them actually clarify that it's staff, McPherson staff that is doing it, certain tasks and not a person you all as consultant.
So are you looking at that responsibilities?
Yeah, there's like, for example, in phase 3 or phase 2 stakeholder input, a lot of those start with staff will create an application and staff contact potential applicants. So that's you. Okay. And when it comes to like advertising or actually just recruiting people, you also do that.
We do that. We do all of it. The work that you guys have to do will be to define the characteristics and qualities, and experiences of the next superintendent. What groups do you want to make contact with? Elected officials, PTA, DAC, whatever groups you want. You're going to have to be doing some of that stuff. We'll do the recruiting. We'll do the preliminary sorting. We'll bring you a slate of shortlisted candidates that fit that criteria. And then the board is more heavily involved. There's a lot of organizational work for meetings to set up so we can go
That's I
around.
want to see which.
And the point of contact for Will's over there is probably going to be on point for some of those things, unless she's going to help to do that, because we don't know what buildings and what times and all that kind of stuff.
But all of the work is basically done by you all. You're locally not.
A lot of secretarial work is done in Omaha. There are 3 ladies in the office in Omaha, and that's it for staffing, and that's why it doesn't cost much.
And our headquarters will make sure all the advertising that's prepared will be then disseminated. So they'll do all of that work. But we do all the on the ground work here.
The recruiting, the calls, we do all the background vetting. And we'll do all the meetings.
Yeah, because I'm hoping on all of your networks, right, that you created over the years, you're looking for actually out there.
Absolutely.
Monique, you have some questions?
Yes, I do. Thank you so much for coming this evening. And unfortunately, I couldn't be there in person, but I appreciate the presentation. I had a question about post-hire support. So I saw in the Phase 5 section about helping to establish performance objectives for the first year and the guarantee. Are there other post-hire supports that you offer?
Well, not in this contract, but we are more than willing to help and advise. You know, the person of this caliber is going to be an experienced superintendent. But for Phase 5, we want to ensure that the first year's goals are manageable, attainable, so that and everybody understands what success looks like, so that that individual gets through the first year. Usually, again, with a district of this size and this kind of history, that's pretty much done anyway with their experience. But yes, we're happy to provide, you know, I've got 40 years in education, 30 plus years as superintendent. We have brain trust that is amazing, great board members that are here to advise us. We're happy to help in any way we can.
And being your neighboring superintendent, I plan to be able to support the person, whichever firm you have. Hopefully it's ours, but again, I'm your neighboring superintendent. I mentor a lot of superintendents across the state of Oregon right now.
Yeah.
And will continue to do so in my capacity as the regional school superintendent.
And it's a professional obligation to them.
It is.
Thank you.
Anything else, Monique?
No, thank you.
Oh, that's it. I noticed in both your RP presentation and in the slide deck, the timeline looks about like what we have discussed already. So, I guess my question is, does that seem reason? Did the timeline you include basically follow your normal plan, or are you modifying, condensing or expanding that to meet what you thought our expectation?
No, we will meet your expectations, but it takes about 3 months.
That's one of the first things, when we meet with you on January 10th, we'll hammer out that timeline to solidify it, to meet your needs and fit it with our protocols.
As we go through the process, does the board see all of the candidates, or is there a cut line, for lack of a better term? I'm a sports guy, so is there a sort of a cut line where you only present a curated list to us, or do we at some point see all of them? And then I guess tangentially, how do we maintain the confidentiality of the applicants if we're putting more out into the conversation?
So 2 weeks after the application period closes, we'll come to you with what we call the short list of people that we vetted who they say they are, and maybe more, and those who aren't. We'll give you the entire applicant pool list. We won't necessarily show you everything. We can give you some of the bio stuff from everybody. We ask the board to sign a confidentiality agreement. We put that information into a Dropbox so that it's not in the district. It's ours, and you would have access to that information. If you have questions about individuals on that list, we can provide you with information about why they didn't make it to the next level. But you'll have a much more extensive look at those curated individuals. You'll see their paperwork, all of the information we gathered while we did our background search, and you'll also see them answer at least 3 questions. So you'll see their paperwork, you'll hear from us, and you'll see them answering questions. So you'll have 3 different looks at what they are.
And I understand that you don't have a crystal ball, but you've been doing this quite a long time. If there's 20 applicants, does the cut line, you present us with 10, you present us with 5, you present, like, what is the best guess today, sitting here without all the information, I get it, of how many of the curated list looks like?
You're likely to have at least 20 plus applications of that. We'll bring you anywhere from 6 to 9-ish of the top candidates. And again, it's hard to say until we see the pool. And by the way, some of the best candidates don't apply until the last few days, just because they're very busy people and they want to make sure their application packets are pristine. So,
And for candidates, confidentiality is very important. So we recommend that only when you've selected your finalists that you're going to interview are the names released. Otherwise, we ask you to keep it confidential.
Sorry, do what? Yeah, we're trying not, yes. I think that's what they just said.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not releasing, yeah,
right, yeah, correct.
yeah.
You'll see everybody, but we won't release the names until you've selected individuals for interviews.
And,
And I think we believe that who you're interviewing for finalists need to be announced publicly, and that's part of the transparency and fidelity to your community. So they know. Yeah.
It'll be up to the board.
sure,
It depends on how you want to structure your interviews. Some boards, I've just had one that wanted to do a closed session Zoom interview of a larger group. And then from that group, they're going to announce the public interviews group. That's different than what we normally do, but that was their desire. So
so there's flexibility available.
yes, that's
Okay.
it's your search.
And you mentioned the involvement of the community groups that we want to involve. Is that before or after we've gotten to the final? So are we ever sort of involving community discussions around individual names and asking for a confidentiality agreement from the participants? Or are we just talking generalities when we talk?
So what we'll do is we'll ask them the 4 same questions. What's good about the community? What's good about the district? What are the issues that the new superintendent's going to face? And what are the characteristics, qualities, and experiences the next superintendent's going to need to be successful? That helps us with the sorting and fitting processes. It also involves them in the process. We recommend that you have a 2-round interview of the individual candidate. That would be a stakeholder, staff, student interview team that would be sworn to some confidentiality because they're going to be interviewing candidates, and they provide written feedback to the board on strengths and weaknesses. That individual will also, at the will of the board, have an opportunity to make presentations in the community. We've done Zoom questions that are posted on your website, so people can see those videos and then respond to strengths and weaknesses. Again, that raw data from a SurveyMonkey goes to you. So yes, it's yes, and depending upon what you would like.
And I think part of what you're asking, Mark, was do we recommend involving community and getting down to the taking the short list down to the finalists? That's who you want to involve and how you want to involve them. And still maintaining confidentiality is really your choice.
Yeah. We don't normally do that, but if that's what you wish, we'll work with you.
And I think one of the other things is we've often had candidates do a public forum and a public seminar so that anyone can come and see the candidates, ask questions, and be a part of the process and provide that feedback.
See the recent Oregon City search on your list. So you're all the folks who stole Dale?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Yeah. I told you she was the right fit, Steve.
Eric has another question.
Yeah, I was just wanting to hear a little bit more about your community input process and what you do. So as you know, we're a dual language district. So how do you do engagement, especially with diverse communities?
I speak Spanish, so I do a lot of the evening events and also the Spanish speaking student events.
But it's not just like a survey, right?
No, nothing else they did live.
Okay.
When we do the students, we always usually work with high school students. We ask the high schools to make sure we have a diverse group of students, not just your student body officers type of person. We want, as an example, in Grants Pass, we had Latinos, we had homeless, we had LGBTQ, we had the ASB, we had the newspaper, the musicians, so we have a broad range. And then we also do an online survey asking the same 4 questions. And that survey is open to anyone. We make sure the board sees every response that is written. We don't change anything. We do take out names and any profanity, and and I think what you also want to know is we will do it in English and we will do it in Spanish. And if there's another language that you might want, when we did Oregon City, we did they have a large Russian population. We did a stakeholder group with the Russian population and had a translator available.
And the material that I think you mentioned in your proposal that you found or summarize the input and material, is that also translated?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Reynolds had
If there's no other questions, we're getting to where we need to get close to wrapping up. Anybody else have anything else? Monique, looking online. We do have one board member, so another one's on his way. We have one that knew that she was going to be unavailable, and so she scored the presentation ahead of time. So I was just going to share. She obviously didn't benefit from your presentation, but she went through the RFP proposal and probably saw your online presentation. Just wanted to share her comments, just that add to the record. Numerically, all of the categories she gave you the highest score that was possible. Extremely thorough process, clear expectations of roles, responsibilities, and tasks, emphasizes transparency throughout the process. Huge network, has experience working with the district, similar to our size in Bend, has consultants based in the Pacific Northwest to better understand the complexities and nuances of our community, very reasonably priced. And I think that was the category. So I will try to share her comments on each firm at the end of our questionnaire.
And as we walk out the door, I say thank you for this opportunity. It's been a pleasure, and we would really like to work with you to help you find your next superintendent. We're very confident we can do a very good job for you. Thank you all.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ryan, for joining us.
And if you didn't know,
Thank you all.
in rural Indiana.
Yeah, you guys, I sincerely apologize that I would normally be 20 minutes away and I'm in Indiana, so more like 2,000 miles away, but thank you so much. Have a great
We'll be in
night.
Indiana in a week, so I'll bring a heavier coat, I think.
Bring a heavier coat. Good night, you guys.
Thank you.
I just wonder perhaps sharing machines thoughts would be better left for the discussion time when they're not sitting there. And I know that people agree with me.
Oh, sure, but it's just for each one, but sure.
Maybe not. I mean,
Yeah,
I don't know. I didn't discussion.
that's fine. That's right. Yeah, I'm fine doing it this way. I just want to make sure that I include them at some point.
But no.
So we will transition to our next presentation, which is,
Were they the only ones in person?
they are the only ones in person. The rest of the presentations will be conducted virtually. So Rose will be, I believe they've all had the opportunity, it's a public meeting, anybody can stream it from our webpage. I believe they all had the opportunity to sit on the last one. I guess that the upside of going first is you set the bar, downside of going first is everybody gets to see what you do and respond to it, I suppose, right?
And embarrassed, I went on call in the car, can't get any notes. Oh, is that their total? Or is that just their presentation?
I'm not sure what the question is.
So the question is, they had this,
Yes.
what do they? Is
I
this,
don't think anybody else has any handouts. I think we're just going by the presentation
Got it.
available.
Okay.
And, it's in our board area, but yeah, you can't get it. So again, hope your glasses are better than mine.
they are.
I'll use the one that's in front of me.
We have.
Are the folks from Brain Associates all available?
Hello. Yep, I believe Steve just got on. It looks like he's still muted.
And this is Jose Martinez. I'm on. Good evening, Steve Chestnut here.
Is the three of you in general, or are we waiting for anyone else?
Nope, just the three of us tonight.
Outstanding. We are ready to begin your presentation whenever you are.
Okay, well, we have just a short slideshow, so I'll introduce myself when we get to the next slide, which you can go ahead and advance. We know that we're on a time constraint, so I'll try to speak quickly. So my name is Kathy Schoenfelder. I'm Vice President of Ray & Associates. Been with the firm for a little over 6 years, with 30 years in the legal background, as a legal assistant for 30 plus years. Mike Collins is the president of our company. He is not with us tonight. Mike and I, just to put this out there, he and I did the North Clackamas, Oregon search last year. That was a search that took about 2 years due to COVID, but we got that done. So I'm happy to be here with you. Steve?
Well, good evening. My name is Steve Chestnut, and I'm very happy to be here as well. Greatly enjoyed working with Ray & Associates. Very excited about the possibility of working with Hillsboro. I was superintendent in Washington State for 21 years and then a superintendent in Arizona for 6 years. I spent the last 2 years of my career in the Scottsdale Unified School District, where I served as an executive director and associate superintendent. I continue to live in Scottsdale, and I joined Ray & Associates 2 years ago. I've been a team member on 7 searches since then. I did participate in candidate research for the North Clackamas search 2 years ago. My other part-time position is that I work with Learn Platform, which is an educational software company, and I'm responsible for outreach to superintendents and district administrators in 7 Western states, including Oregon. Do most of that work in the summer, and I enjoy that as well. But as I mentioned, very excited to be with you this evening and looking forward to getting to know you a little bit better.
You can go to the next slide, please.
And I will go ahead and continue. I just wanted to introduce Dr. Ann Schultz, who's not able to be with us tonight. She has another commitment. She has 25 years of experience in education in Wisconsin, where she served as a teacher, principal, and superintendent. She is currently the executive director of the Cherry Creek Academy in Inglewood, California, which is very much like being a superintendent in that system in Colorado. I think I said California, didn't I?
You did,
Yeah.
but that's okay.
Well, it starts with a C, so I got a little tongue-tied there. I had the great pleasure of working with Ann Schultz on a survey earlier, or on a search earlier this year, ESD 123 in Pasco, Washington, an educational service agency that serves 23 school districts there, and she is wonderful to work with, as she apologizes that she's not able to be with us this evening.
Hello, my name is Jose Martinez, and I am also a practitioner. My teaching, administrative experience, and superintendent experience have been in Western Massachusetts, New York State, and brief tenure in Philadelphia. I've been with Ray & Associates since I retired, so I am what is called here a recovering superintendent. And I'm very glad to be with you.
Okay, next slide, please. So we clearly know that you have seen this information perhaps printed off for you, so I'm not going to read every bullet point just because of the time. But our firm has been in business since 1975. We are one of several, or only several, however you want to word that, women-owned firms in the country. We have a diverse team of both candidates that we have placed and associates who work with us. Over 40% of our associates are comprised of women and people of color. We do pride ourselves on the candidate pool that we have. And when I say pool, I mean our database. I don't mean that we have a stable of candidates. Quite often, the candidates that we place in a position are candidates that were not in our database, just so that you're aware of that. We do have a full-time office staff in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, which is where I am on a really chilly winter night. But we do have associates all across the country. So next slide, please. Thank you. This is our diversity slide, which we, take pride in being committed to diversity, equity, inclusion, and social justice. That being said, I do want to point out that our goal is to find the best candidate for the position, regardless of what their background or ethnicity is. This is not a statement that says that this is the kind of candidate we are looking for, but rather, we believe that this is the practice that needs to be followed evenly across the board. But again, like I said, it all comes down to finding the best candidate, the best fit for the district. I believe, Jose, you're the next slide.
Yeah, the next slide, please. I would like to highlight that we have an expansive group of administrators that we contact for all of these. Now, it is true that so many of them come from outside our database, but we also have a lot of hits to our database of people seeing what is it that Ray Associates have been working with and what have available. We are continuously enjoying contact with people that we have positioned or people that applied and they're quality candidates, but have not gotten a specific position we were searching for. It is called a care of candidate. Our process is quite extensive. And when you do have a difficult process to go through, you start thinking there must be something very special about this district. And if anything, it allows the person to be that much more engaged. And we don't just say, okay, you didn't get it, I'm forgetting you. We keep in contact, and those contacts really give us a lot of benefit. Next slide, please. So this is your search. We think of us as somebody that puts the scaffolding around it. And at every point, make sure that it is your search. The timeline for the search will be determined by you. We facilitate that process. You will receive a lot of iterations of the timeline, and you keep making changes because it is your search. The profile of the ideal candidate is very important for us. We have a research-based tool that we use, and we, with consultation with you, like to provide the tool and use it with a great group of stakeholders. Of course, you are the hiring authority, but if we give you all kinds of information that we gather from the community or from your teachers or from any of the stakeholders, you will be able to incorporate what you think should be incorporated. We conduct interviews, the very preliminary phone interviews. We do a lot of searching using digital media. We find out all kinds of interesting stories about the people who apply, which is very helpful to you. And when it comes to the semifinalists and finalists, of course, you are involved in the direct process of interviewing, but you should also remember that you will have access to all of the applications that come. And there have been some times in which a board says, we like the quality of the candidates you're putting forth for the preliminary, semifinalists, and finalists. But we were curious, and we would like to introduce this one other candidate that we saw in your list of applications. We are able to talk to you about what the compensation in the area is and allow you to come to a conclusion. And we are more than willing to negotiate the compensation and negotiate the engagement of that candidate. Could I have the next slide, please? I told you about the tool that we use. It is very important that you and everybody knows how that person talks, how that person works, how that person relates. I mean, you will have that person so clear in your mind, and the community also will hear what is it that you are looking for. And those qualities allow us to make sure that there are no surprises on your part, on our task of finding you exactly the candidate that you want. And those meetings that we conduct with stakeholders will be done at your pleasure. So in some communities, it's very extensive and we are willing to do that. In other communities, not as much. That is up to you. Next slide, please. We, again, aggressively recruit top candidates. We do so through the regular professional venues that do provide very good results, but we use our nationwide network of associates and also of candidates, and we get a lot of recommendations from that group. Next slide, please. So our screening of the candidates, as I told you, include a first review of their record that is available and open, but the selected finalists get what we call the FBI treatment. In other words, we engage a professional organization to go very deep into the background of these candidates. We bring the top candidates to you, and all the information that should go with them is going to be at your disposal. And next slide, please. I think that Dr. Chestnut takes from there. I would like to mention two things because I don't see it in the PowerPoint. And that's one that we do have a guarantee of the first 2 years if somebody, even though our record for tenure is very, very good, for whatever reason, maybe somebody moved to the East Coast to be with family and family decided to move to Florida. Whatever happens to be the case, we guarantee that we will do the search at no cost to you all over again. And also that once you get your superintendent, we will not call them even for referrals for 5 full years.
Great, thank you, Jose. That brings us to stages 4 and 5 on our draft timeline, which you hopefully looked at on page 2 of the RFP response. But we go in stages, and stages 4 and 5 are where we finalize the process, which is the board selection of candidates. And with our team, the board will review the top candidate applications and the one-way video interviews. We call them Spark Hire videos. And they are about 8 to 10 minutes long. So the 10 or 12 recommended candidates that we bring to you based on your superintendent profile that has been developed, you will have a complete and thorough understanding of them, as Jose mentioned. And that Spark Hire video is a very good tool because it will give you an opportunity to see what they are like in person. In the interest of time, we're not going to be able to show you that slide tonight. It's on the next slide. I would encourage you to click on that. 2 of our associates give you an example of what that is like, but not tonight. If you go back to the previous slide, just to wrap that up, we also will help you with a consensus building matrix to help you determine who will be your first round interviewees and your second round interviewees. We will help you to deliberate and discuss, but this is obviously your search. And then prior to all of that, of course, we will finalize the development of board interview questions for both the initial round of interviews and the second round of interviews as described on that timeline. So let's advance 2 slides. Now we have 15 minutes here. Kind of want to wrap this up. Let's go one more, please. So why choose the Ray Way? I really like that first reference from Alhambra Elementary School District. I had an opportunity to work on that search here in Phoenix, and I know that the board was very pleased with our work there, and they said we are great at collaborating, and they also said we had an amazing administrative team. So those are 2 of many reasons that makes the Ray Way work very well. Next slide. So just any good presentation has a summary. So in summary, we have unique size and scope. We will bring you a large pool of candidates. We typically get 40 to 50 highly qualified candidates in our searches, and you will have access to every application, as Jose mentioned. We believe in engagement. The 31 Quality Survey engages your entire community, and we get generally, in a district your size, up to 2,000 responses. There's always a lot of interest in the superintendent search. We do the stakeholder meetings, as Jose described, and almost always those are via Zoom, but of course we are willing to show up in person and do those in person if that's something you would prefer. The next thing, we conduct educational leadership outreach. As Jose mentioned, we have a website that is utilized greatly by candidates. And when I was a superintendent looking for a new job, the Ray & Associates website was one of the first places I looked because we're the largest search firm in the nation. We provide candidate information, as Jose mentioned. We provide a written report on each of those top 10 or 12 finalists, or I should say semifinalists. We do not only we do the reference checks, but we also call people that are not on the reference list. We're very thorough in our vetting of candidates, so there's no surprises. We believe in the board's leadership. We keep saying that, but we know that you are in charge of this search. You determine the timelines, you determine the compensation, you finalize the profile, you lead the interviews. This is your search and not ours. We provide selection assistance. We assist with contract finalization if that's needed. And finally, as Jose said, we guarantee our work. If there's a resignation or termination within 2 years, the base fee is waived. We come back and do that search again, although that does not happen very often. We have a wonderful percentage of success. But we're very flexible. We can be 100% virtual, and some of our searches are like that. We can do hybrid. We can show up in person for some meetings. That is up to you, and we're very flexible in that regard. And that concludes our presentation. We've got to answer any questions you might have.
Outstanding. Thank you guys so much for being here tonight. We've been joined by Patrick too. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So just for my colleagues, Director McGuire has joined us online as well. So, does anybody have questions for the team of Ray & Associates?
You mentioned the success rate. What is the average over the last 5 years of retention?
How long people have stayed over the last 5 years? Our record used to be about 8 years. Obviously, what took place in the last couple years has kind of changed our average. So now we're down to about 6 years for retention. I realize your district has been very lucky in that your superintendent has been there an extensive amount of time. So congratulations to you. This is going to be very difficult for you. The national average itself, according to everything that we see, is about 4 years. So we're about 6, maybe 6.5 years at this time.
And what percentage is that of your candidates?
I think in the last 6.5 years, we probably only had to do our guarantee maybe 3 times. So I'm going to stick to that 6-year figure.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Questions? Nancy?
Hello, and thank you for joining us. Just out of curiosity, I didn't see an estimate on potentially what the cost would be for such a search. And I was just wondering, are you comfortable with an estimate of that cost or no?
So on page 6 of the proposal, we have our base fee is $21,000. And then on page 7 would be what we estimate, and again, it's just an estimate for expenses. Obviously, travel is one of those hot button items right now, and that nobody can begin to guess what the cost is going to be to fly anywhere. So we have the estimated expenses, which includes the travel at about $2,500. That does not include advertising. I would anticipate advertising to be about $1,200 to $1,500, depending on which venues the board selects. We do, part of our package is a 30-day posting with Ed Week. That's a $495 cost that we incur and place on your behalf. That estimate also does not include candidate interview expenses. As an example, if you have the finalists come in from wherever they are, that's not part of our package cost. That's a cost incurred by the district if you elect to do so.
I would like to add that we don't have a preference on working remotely hybrid or in person. We do it like that because we want you to decide. We want you here and you understand that there's some travel or whatever. We want you to decide how this is done. We can do it any which way.
Right, so the RFP estimated at 23 something, right?
Yeah, 23.5, correct. So that
Okay.
21 is our base fee, and that covers all of our work. Whether it's 5 stakeholder meetings or 25 stakeholder meetings, we don't charge additionally for per meeting or anything like that. So that's our services from front to end, other than travel. And we do have the 31 quality survey for the profile building, and there's no additional charge for foreign languages for those either. And the background, the professional background checks for what I call the finalists, and I'm going to say the number 3, that's just a number I like. We do that at our expense as well. There's no cost to the district for that.
Would,
Lisa,
If we chose to do in-person community engagement, can you speak a little bit to your experience doing that in other districts like ours, where we tend to hold community events bilingually in both Spanish and English, and what that might look like?
No problem.
So
And I am talking to you from the East Coast right now, where it's very cold right now. So like you may be. But we do have associates that can provide those services, and those will be part of our services all over the nation. And if we need to be there, we'll be there. If you want it differently, we will do it any which mode you desire.
And in person is not a problem, as we've said. If you would like to have some sessions virtual as well, that's our hybrid model, where we would have an associate there in person, and perhaps one of our other team members would be wherever they are doing the virtual sessions. If you feel that you need a Spanish speaking person in a regular meeting, then we would have 2 associates there to cover that. That's done quite often. And for those that perhaps are unable to attend a stakeholder meeting, we have questions that we can provide ahead of time. We each ask each group the same 8 questions. So those questions can be provided on your website for those that aren't comfortable coming out in person, and then they can still respond to those and provide them to us so that their opinions and themes get incorporated into the whole group.
Yeah, if I could jump in too, just to emphasize the point that engagement process is very important to us. And we believe very much in that. And so we work very hard to get that feedback from stakeholders. And we always recommend that it includes students, for example. And so we try to gather a lot of information. And then one thing that we also do towards the end of the process is that when we have those forums, those community meetings, whether they are in person or virtual, participants get what we call an impression form. And it's not a vote, but it is an impression form to give feedback to the school board so that they can see what those participants are thinking of the different candidates. Gives them an opportunity for further input.
With the finalists, just
With
to clarify.
With the finalists, yes.
can you tell us a little bit about what your thoughts are about our community? You did mention that, we have a long time serving superintendent, and what do you think our strengths are with regard to getting a successful match for us?
Steve, do you want to answer that one?
Well, I know that the Hillsboro School District has a wonderful reputation of being an outstanding district. I know that you have a diverse student body, 40% Hispanic students. I think that's a wonderful asset. I know that you have big shoes to fill in a superintendent, and that is a challenge that I know a lot of candidates are up to. That is the kind of district that attracts good candidates, and that's why it's exciting to work on a search like this.
Your community might have a hard time. I did 2 searches last season where the superintendent had been there double-digit years, and the community had a hard time coming to terms with the fact that the next superintendent may not stay that long. That's kind of a hard pill to swallow sometimes. I kind of say that we would rather come in and replace a superintendent that has been there a long time that people are happy to see leave, as opposed to someone that has been there a long time and people are sad to see leave. So it's a change for everybody, not just the board, not just the district employees, but the community as well. And hey, you know, Oregon is a great place to be. My daughter lives there. So logistics are always good too for a candidate, right?
We have a few board members that are still coming to terms with the departure as well, so the community is understandable.
Yeah.
We would do a board for a superintendent who you hate to see depart and those who you cannot wait. I mean, it's up to you.
Other questions? Monique or Patrick, do you have anything you want to ask?
No, I just want to say thank you for the presentation. I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Looking at your timeline on page 2 of the RFP, you guys mentioned it earlier. It's eerily similar to what we've sketched out ourselves in a previous board meeting. So is the timeline sort of being molded, expanded, contracted to fit what our expectations are, or is this about what you think is right?
Well, I tried to go by the information that was provided in the RFP. We kind of base our timeline around the first meeting date, which is that January 10th date. And obviously, these dates are fluid until we have that first meeting and we have everybody there with their calendars to come up with the firm dates. I think it's a really good timeline. It gives you just a little over 30 days of recruitment. It also gives you, after the first meeting date, about 2 weeks to get the stakeholder meetings set up, the groups figured out, the locations, logistics, all of that kind of stuff. And then again, about 5 weeks of recruitment, and still have the search done by April 10th or the week of April 10th, which is good. The later you go, the smaller the candidate pool will be. You will still have candidates, you will still have applicants, but it could affect and will affect likely the quality of those candidates. I do want to say, because I try to be a little bit forthcoming, in that if you select us and we go through this process and you interview the finalists, however many there are, and you aren't happy with who the finalists are after you interview them, and if you don't want to hire any of them, then we'll come back again and do the search again at no cost except for the expenses. So we don't want a body.
No.
We want the right body. So that being said, I try to be candid and forthright. I don't anticipate that happening, but I just like to put that out there so that people are aware of that.
In the RFP, you mentioned that you work with a number of school districts in Oregon, which I appreciate. I will say that you mentioned Eugene, and another firm also mentioned Eugene. So I'm wondering if you could clarify when you did the Eugene search and.
That would have, yep, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Good.
So that would have been, what we do is we go back X number of years in our list and put them in. So that was before I started. So that would have been over 6 years ago. I don't have that for whatever reason. Oh, that would have been 2011. Sorry, I had to flip my page over. 2011 is when that was done. So that was obviously not the most recent one. North Clackamas was just in 2020. Although that seems like a lifetime ago now, I have to say. And we did Hood River in 2018, Lake Oswego in 2018, and Gresham in 2017. Now, I know that both of those have gone through changes since then. I know that Gresham has for sure, and I know that Hood River has for sure gone through a change. So North Clackamas would have been the most recent one in 2020.
I think you sort of answered this in previous questions and follow-ups, but at what point, in your opinion or process, do the names of candidates become available? Like I'm very concerned about respecting the confidentiality of the applicants until we're maybe down to the finalists, and you talked about feedback from the community on various candidates. So at what point does that, in your process, does the exposure of the names of the candidates become public?
at the very end. When you know who the finalists are, whether that number is 2, 3, 4, whatever the number is, then we give those candidates an opportunity. Once we notify them, we give them some time to tell their people. That's what I always say. Now it's serious. It's time to tell your people. And then we'll provide you with a headshot, bio, redacted resume, whatever you'd like, however you want to get the word out. But their names stay confidential until the very last interview. The final round is how I describe it. We would provide information to the board in advance. I'm kind of backing up. Once we know which candidates we feel best match the profile and the criteria that we believe the board is looking for, we screen and vet, I'm going to say 8 to 12 candidates. But you will see every application like we mentioned, and that will be done through a link. So at that point in time, we would have board members sign confidentiality agreements. We all know it's a piece of paper, but we have to do our best to try and do the right thing to maintain confidentiality, because that's key. It's key to our business and it's key to the candidates, because in all likelihood, they may be looking for a job while they already have one. So their names, we would prefer to not be released until the very end, final round interviews.
All right. Yeah, so that was so you're thinking at some point somebody mentioned maybe 40 applicants. We'll see all of those, but you will curate a list that we think are the best match and then help us get down to what our finalists might be.
Correct. You will get a link to all 40 as the number, whatever the number is. And then you will get an individual link to those, I'm going to say 8 to 12 candidates that we feel best match the criteria. And then we screen and vet those 8 to 12. So you'll get an individual link to their application packet for those 8 to 12, in addition to the link to their Spark Hire video. And we would provide that to you in advance of the date that we meet to discuss the candidates, probably about 7 days in advance, because it's a lot of information to look through. There's an application, cover letter, resume, and letters of recommendation. And we want everybody to come to the meeting prepared to discuss these candidates. And at that meeting, we then go into more detail, what their references said, how they answered questions such as, what's the status of your contract? Have you ever been fired, resigned, let go? We have some district specific questions that we would ask those candidates. We will provide you information on the internet search, what we found, if anything, and give you comments from what the references have said. And I also like to say that we have had references before say not positive things about candidates. And so then we make the executive decision to perhaps pull those candidates out. You would still see their information, but if we find something, if a reference says something, or if we find something on the internet that we just can't swallow, we take the opportunity on our end to remove that candidate from our screening and vetting process. Now, keep in mind the last 2 years, there's a lot of articles out there if you're a sitting superintendent, and most of them are negative. So that's a little bit different as opposed to something more serious. So just keep that in mind.
So when you mentioned the community engagement, what you're doing there is sort of asking general questions and helping us define a candidate profile.
Yes.
Correct. That's the most fun part.
Yeah.
I like that part.
So my last question is, two of you had mentioned the Spark Hire interviews, the video. Could you tell me a little bit more about what they do in an 8-minute video?
So, yep, I certainly can. We do these for all of our searches. So we have a series of questions, and it's typically 3 questions, perhaps 4. And they have, I think Steve was maybe a little long on his time. I think we give him about 1:30 to answer each question. One of them is as simple as tell us a little bit about your educational experience or that kind of thing. And one of them is, I believe, experience with strategic planning and stakeholder involvement, closing the achievement gap or opportunity gap. So they have 1:30 to answer each of those questions, and then we provide you a link so that you can watch it. It helps to put a face with a name. It also helps you to see if they can think quickly on their feet. They do not get the questions in advance, so they haven't seen them ahead of time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I know you don't have your computer today, but their presentation has links to 2 sample Spark Hire videos. We can watch it.
Yes.
Again, the purpose is not for you to have substantive information on the candidates, but see if there is a spark, as we say, that calls your attention. Have a sense of the person that cannot be gotten with only paper.
Understood. Thank you.
Other questions from board members, cabinet, anybody? All right, thank you again for being with us today.
Thank you for inviting us, and I appreciate you screen sharing for us. Thank you so much. We look forward to hearing from you. Have a good night.
Have a good night.
All right, we have 5 minutes of transition time before our next presentation from Human Capital Enterprises. I suppose if they are ready, we can go whenever they are, but theoretically they're at 6:50.
They're
So
not all on yet.
they're not all on. All right, so maybe mute the boardroom. I will put our board meeting in recess. So we are, I guess, do it again. We are now back in order. Our next group to present is Human Capital Enterprises. We have 3 folks from their firm available. Chat with us tonight. Take it away, folks.
Should we take it away?
Absolutely.
All right, wonderful. Hillsboro, great to be with you tonight. Thank you so much for inviting us. We are so honored and pumped to be able to talk to you this evening. I'm Hank Harris with Human Capital Enterprises. I'm going to ask my awesome colleagues to introduce themselves in just a moment. Let's move that slide down just one if we can. And maybe while you're listening to us introduce ourselves, we can ask you to just also, with one eye, look through our value statement. We choose these carefully. They are deep reflections of who we are and what we believe. And I'm so excited to bring with me tonight 2 great folks, my colleagues Hector Garcia and Robin Bean, and I would love to have each of them take a moment to introduce themselves. So Hector.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Hector Garcia. I am a current superintendent and have been an educator for over 30 years. Currently live just outside of Chicago in Elmhurst, Illinois.
Thanks, Hector. And Robin?
Well, good evening. It's nice to be here. And I come to you from about a quarter mile away from Brown Middle School. I am your neighbor. I live in Hillsboro. I've spent my professional career right here in the Willamette Valley and specifically at Northwest Regional ESD. But going way, way back, I actually worked a year at Peter Bosco when I first got to Oregon. So I'm very familiar with Hillsboro, both as a resident, a community member, your neighbor, and I finished my career in the HR office at Northwest Regional ESD, but prior to that, I worked in special education and as a speech pathologist. And in both of those roles, all of those roles, I had a deep connectivity to the Hillsboro School District through my work at the ESD and our collaborations with your district. So this feels really familiar, and it's great to be here tonight. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Robin. And I'm Hank Harris. I've led Human Capital Enterprises for 10 years, but prior to that, I was a lifelong K-12 educator who did most of my work in Oregon. I was a teacher and a principal and an HR director. I worked in Silver Falls and Westland Wilsonville and Canby and Portland Public. I think that's my 4 Oregon districts. And as somebody who's never gone to work in the Hillsboro School District, but has lived in the metro area for much of my grown-up life, one of the things that's really exciting about being with you tonight, and I think you know this, but if you don't, you should know this, Hillsboro has a long-standing reputation. It's just really high-quality board, high-quality leadership that quietly goes about doing outstanding work for kids. You're not always on the front page of the Oregonian, and that's often a good thing, right? But when folks speak about destination districts in the Portland metro area, Hillsboro's always in that list of places where people want to work. So congrats to you for many, many years of great leadership. While we're chatting, one other thing, I'm sorry. So not with us today, we have Kathleen Rodden-Nord is also on our team. That may or may not be a name that's familiar to you. Kathleen was superintendent of Junction City down in Eugene area for 17 years, retired a couple of years ago, is very active in COSA and very active in our searches she sends her greetings tonight. If we could go to the next slide, please. You saw us a little bit at the end of that previous slide about Oregon, but I want to talk to you about the We Care. This is really important. We do this work because we love this work and we are really committed to Oregon. We do searches in other states, but almost all in the Pacific Northwest, and 2 of the 3 of us being Oregonians, Robin a native Oregonian, me an adopted Oregonian. We're wedded to the success of this, of not only your district, but the state of Oregon. And so what happens in the Hillsboro district, the Hillsboro School District, in terms of finding great leadership impacts kids, not only in your community, as you know, but throughout the state. And that matters to us really meaningfully. If we can go to the next slide. As you probably know, if you looked through our proposal, we walk you through the different elements of the proposal. In some ways, and I know you're interviewing multiple firms tonight, some of that is going to sound similar. I think most firms do an engagement with the community, have some degree of recruiting, have some degree of an interview process. I want to pull out a couple specific pieces about the work that we do, particularly with recruitment and interviewing. Remember, and again, I know we didn't spend a lot of time on the first slide, but one of the things that you might have seen is that we come from this from an HR perspective. Robin and I are HR folks. Hector and Kathleen are superintendents. Very few firms, if any, that we know of, certainly operating in the Northwest, who do superintendent searches, come from that combined skill set. What we bring from an HR lens, in conjunction with the importance of a superintendent lens, which Hector and Kathleen bring, is deep involvement over decades in the work of recruiting and in the work of creating processes that are respectful, that are equitable, that are fair to candidates, that honor candidates, that put their name in a hat in a search. I think many of us in our careers, and I would propose you board members too, have maybe once upon a time applied for a job and went through a process that didn't feel particularly respectful. I know that I did a few times in my journey, where I felt like, is anyone ever going to call me and let me know what happened? We want to make sure that every candidate is treated with the utmost of respect, because we know that we are representing the Hillsboro School District. We know that only one person will walk away becoming your superintendent and the others won't. But we want to make sure they walk away feeling this was a really great process, and this is a district. I didn't get the job this time around, but this sure is a district that I would recommend to my friends and colleagues because it's a great place. And that is what we hear time and time again from people who work with us as candidates, also as board members, that we have a process that really is a cut above in terms of professionalism and expertise. And I think some of that just comes from our love of this work, and some of this comes from the fact that we bring superintendent leadership and HR leadership together to make sure you have the most robust, powerful, and impressive process you can have in the superintendent search. So on this slide, I was about to mention, there's a couple things I want to speak about, which I think differentiate us a bit. The recruitment of candidates is really key, and it's not about simply putting ads up, as I think you well know. We engage networks and networks of networks. We are known very, very well in Oregon. We are known very well regionally, and we actually have a very solid national reputation. So we are among the 4 of us, folks who can actually pick up a phone and call superintendent and have them answer the phone. We reach out to folks who may be candidates for Hillsboro, or maybe they're not, but they know people who might be interested or might be thinking about such an opportunity. And that's how we do the bulk of our recruitment work. We also, I think, and I can't say this for certain because I don't necessarily know every other firm's protocols, but I believe we are the only firm operating in the Northwest where we recommend 4 rounds of interview. We start with a preliminary interview where the consultants do virtual interviews with candidates. We do a first round with the board. We recommend a community-based interview and then a second round with the board. And I think that gives us gives you as board a lot of data points by which you can feel a level of confidence that you are really landing on the right candidate for this moment in time in Hillsboro. If we could go to that next slide, that would be great. And I think we'll move a little faster through the next ones. I won't read you these. They're 3 quick bullet points, but we are invested in collaborating, and we're not too proud to recognize that you as board members also come with wisdom around the work of hiring. And so it's not uncommon for us to be in conversation with you and to talk about what could work, what might look different. We do not come in with a canned program and say, this is the way it must be. Next slide, please. So we're very, very proud of our record in Oregon. Not only that we have been able to engage in these searches, but we have found really great leaders for school districts. And so I've highlighted over the last 5 or 6 years, maybe I think each year our largest Oregon search that we did, and you'll see some of the big districts in the state. We are very pleased that we served Beaverton, currently Salem-Keizer. We served Portland Public, the caveat being that I was the lead on the search that brought Guadalupe Guerrero. It was not with my own firm at that time. So, but nonetheless, when you look at that list, Medford as well, we are honored that not only do we serve some of the largest districts in the state of Oregon, but if you look at the list below, those are districts we've either done a cabinet level search or a superintendent search. That's not a full list, but that gives you a flavor of some of the communities across Oregon that we have proudly served over the last several years. Next slide, please. And we're not just local. So although our heart is in Oregon, we have a very strong national following. One of the reasons we're really excited to bring Hector in here. And our listserv, which some of you may even be on, I don't know that, we have over 44,000 subscribers to our listserv. When we announce your job, we have about a 20 to 35% open rate when we do a listserv. That's a really significant and sizable rate of opens. That means out of 40,000, we are likely to have 20,000 people open the email. Y'all know in the morning when you get on your email, there's a whole bunch of emails from groups that you don't want to even look at. You delete before you even open, and you wish that email would go away, because I get it all the time. We have a very loyal following. 20,000 people reading about the Hillsboro superintendent vacancies is quite considerable, and that's a big part of our networking and marketing. But it's not, as I said before, the only part. We also spend a ton of time on the phone calling school leaders regionally and across the country. Next slide, if you will. Just a couple of quotes. I'll let you read those, and then I think we'll be ready to take some questions. I tend to tap fast when there's a clock going, so I might slow down just a little bit. Thank you. And I believe this is our last slide. So thank you, board, for allowing us to share, but we're excited to hear questions that you might have for us.
All right, thank you guys. Board members, you have questions? Lisa's got a hand up? Okay, good.
I have a few questions. My first one is, I might have missed it, but I just scanned through again, and so I missed it twice. Can you speak a little bit to what like the diversity of schools that you've brought other districts has looked like in terms of like the demographics of candidates? It's something that is a big value to our board, and I'd like to know a little more about your experience doing that.
Sure. So I would say when I think about our most recent Oregon search, so currently we're doing Salem-Keizer. We are in the middle of that process right now. When I think about Beaverton, and you might have seen that quote toward the end, Beaverton told us at the beginning, go find us incredibly talented, diverse candidates. And we did. So I won't give necessarily I won't necessarily give the specifics of who they interviewed 11, if I remember correctly, 11 candidates in the first round. Without giving specific numbers, I will say that they were impressively diverse from a racial, ethnicity, gender, gay, straight perspective. And I know our board was wowed when they met those candidates. I think, I'm sorry, was that totality of your question, or was there a second piece that I forgot?
That was the main question. I guess I was more hoping that there would be like here are the searches we've done, and here's, like our, I'm a data person.
Yeah.
Here's what our numbers have looked like for other searches.
Yeah, I'd be happy to get that to you, but here's the other thing I would say about that. So, and I'm glad you asked that, because I knew there was a second thing I wanted to say. The ability to attract diverse pools is very much a function, not only of us, we're really good at it, but a function of you. And so when we represent a district like Hillsboro is, that is actively focused on the work of equity and focused on the work of diversifying their talent pool, whether it's the superintendent or another level, that is a huge bonus, right? Because we can reach out, and I remember another search that we did recently where we were speaking to very talented candidates who didn't look like me across the country. And they're smart and they're doing their homework and they're saying, that doesn't feel like, thank you, Hank, thank you for calling me, but that doesn't feel like a district I want to be in. So it really is a partnership. So I'd be happy to provide you data, but recognize that some districts are going to, we can do the calls, right? But some districts are going to attract folks more than other folks. I venture to say that Hillsboro is going to be right up there with some of our, with Beaverton, that you're going to walk into the room or the virtual room a few months from now and say, whoa, Hector, Rob, and Hank, yes, awesome. That's what we're expecting.
And my follow-up question to Lisa's question is, so is it the diversity of our student body, which we have a majority minority, or what is it that you feel will bring that diversity?
Yeah, let me see if Hector and Robin want to weigh in, and then I might add to that too. So Hector, Robin.
Well, I just want to echo Hank's comments about reputation. It is among Oregonians for sure, and even Southwest Washington, folks who are hearing about Hillsboro know that you are a community that deeply values diversity, that wants the same equitable access for all kids in your district. I think it's just, you're known for the work you're doing around equity, and that resonates with candidates who share that vision and goal. And I think that's what I would echo. I think that pulls people in because you are you, and then we'll do the great work of sharing your story all the more. Hector, what would you add?
I think the only thing that hasn't been added is the connection piece that all of us bring to the table. People being in the field for multiple years and having large networks, it's important to be able to have diverse candidates hear personally from people who they trust, and letting them know a little bit about the school district and having them feel comfortable to apply and not pass up an opportunity. So it's not only the school district, it is also the personal connections that we've had over the years and developed.
I'll add one more piece that I think when a candidate, if we reach out to a candidate that doesn't know Hillsboro by reputation, what are they going to look at first? They're going to go look on your website at what the board looks like, and they're going to try to look at what your leaders look like. And I think that's telling.
Do you have a question? Sorry.
Yeah, my question was just around your retention of your recruitment efforts. What's the percentage of them staying on over 5 years?
Yeah, that's great. So it wasn't, I'm going to try to pull up, I might not be able to pull it up so quickly in the middle of the conversation, but as of, so we've been in business for 10 years, and we've been in business, although in the first few years we were more cabinet level searches. And so we've been really deeply in the work of superintendencies since about 2016. Between 2016 and 2020, we co-branded with HYA. But in the time from 2016 to the present, for a long time, and it ended only recently, it ended just about a year ago. Until a year ago, all of the superintendents we placed were still in their jobs. So we had 100% longevity rate until just about a year ago. And people do retire, so there's no way that 100% is going to last forever. The slide I want to look for, and I don't know that I can quickly find, but I believe is the case, and you'll have to forgive me if I'm one off, is that all superintendents we hired in 2017 were still in their position. If not today, then very recently. In the world of superintendents, that's a pretty good run. So I think about folks like Guadalupe Guerrero and Fred Champion in Medford, and I know I'm missing a couple of other names, but our entire cohort from 2017 was still in place until if they're not still, it was until very recently when the first one either retired or took a new job.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you. Another question that I have, I know that you're currently working with Salem Kaiser on their process, and they're a couple months ahead of us. I'm a little concerned about how that might impact the folks that we attract in terms of like competing with another large district in Oregon, and I'm hoping you can speak to that.
Yeah, I actually think it's a huge advantage, honestly, and I'll tell you why. So Salem Kaiser is going to be ahead of you. I mean, they have to be, right? I mean, they're already in the middle of their vacancy period. Their final round will be February, I forget the exact date, but mid-February. It's not possible in terms of your timeline for you to be also making a hire in mid-February. So they will select whoever they select. The process that we go through in Salem Kaiser to attract great candidates to Oregon, remember, only one person is going to come out as the superintendent of Salem Kaiser. We are going to attract multiple very strong candidates to that search. And you know what we're going to say when our top people don't get the job in Salem Kaiser? We're going to say, you're interested in coming to Oregon. There's another incredible opportunity. These folks will have already been doing their homework about Oregon. They will have already decided they want to live there. And so that is a huge advantage to this search. We're not looking for people that aren't high talent to come to Hillsboro. I think I'll leave it there. There are, although the press will tell you differently, and although this is a more difficult time than ever before to find a superintendent, I tell you this, there are extraordinary leaders who are looking for great school boards and great school districts where they can do the work and where they can fight the right fight. And actually, we get calls from parts of the country right now where we didn't get calls 5 years ago from people saying, you know what, I think it's time for me to raise my family in the Pacific Northwest. So you will benefit from that.
Lisa asked the question a lot more nice. I've been struggling with how to phrase this question in a nice way for quite a while.
Say it as you will, board chair.
All right. So how do we avoid just having our applicant pool with you be the people who didn't make the cut in Salem Kaiser?
Oh my gosh. Great question. Hector, Robin, want to jump in on that one?
Robin, would you
I'm
like
gonna
to
let
go
Hector
first?
go first.
Oh, sure. Well, I think it's important there as a superintendent, you certainly have your eye on different school districts, and you will certainly draw superintendents that are specifically attracted to your school district that were not interested in any other school district. So while you may think that everybody is going to go to another school district, that's not really going to be the case. In my case and in my colleagues' case, we focus in on particular school districts and we'll turn down what could be similar schools and really focus in on one particular one. So I wouldn't say that that's necessarily a second choice. You're going to have very focused administrators looking at your school district.
And I would agree. I think there will be people who are interested potentially in both Salem Kaiser and Hillsboro, and it's not just the cast-offs. I think there'll be folks who would be interested in both. And also, I think there will be many people interested exclusively in Hillsboro. Its location is a little different. Its student population is a little different. Its board looks a little different. So there would be people who exclusively are interested in Hillsboro.
Yeah.
Thank you, Hector, for giving me a better way to say that. Yes,
And
I'd rather
I'm
not
gonna-
have people.
If I could just add
would be their second choice. That's a good way to put it.
It absolutely isn't. And I was really just responding to does it hurt us that we're in the same year as Salem Kaiser? That was really what I wanted to respond to. But we are awesome recruiters, if I may say myself. So you're going to get a whole lot of folks also, in addition to whoever might have discovered you through Salem Kaiser, but as Robin and Hector said, who are specifically looking for Hillsboro or a community like Hillsboro for all the uniquenesses that Hillsboro offers.
Other questions from my colleagues?
I apologize. I'm Nancy. I still have concerns. And your group is not huge. So who's going to work on ours and who's going to work on Salem Kaiser? I'm just not, I don't know.
Say, I want to answer that question. So say more about that. Are you Like
Well,
bandwidth to handle?
yes, they're 2 months ahead of us, great, but we have a very finite timeline. Our chair has done a great job of saying we want it done by this date. And I'm just concerned that our timeline runs up against their timeline. And how do you do both at the same time? We're both large school districts.
Mm-hmm. I would say first and foremost, we're not all working on both. For instance, I'm not engaged in the Salem-Keizer search, which is why I'm available in here tonight, and Hillsboro's home to me, so it's my first choice. So we are a small team, but we don't all work on every search, so that we are able to give all of our time and energy to the search that we're on. And
I'm also not working on it. I was just going to add, I'm also not working on that particular one.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That does help.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions? So I guess regarding the timeline, you got your timeline. I'm guessing that's influenced by the public comments we've made. Does our timeline seem appropriate to you? Do you feel like we're rushing? Do you feel like we're going too slowly? Does the timeline you have in your RFP response and that what we've discussed make sense?
Yes, and I want to just quickly give me one moment to pull up the timeline that we recommended, which you're correct. Was
Page 6. Page 6 of your proposal, if it helps.
Thank you. Thank you, my friend. Thank you. Yes, so it was correlated to your RFP. End of April is an okay time, but I think getting there earlier is great. And if the board is committed, we can move faster. So if that is something the board wants to do, that is something we will do. One of the key issues, and so one of the key issues is around calendaring and making sure that board members can commit to certain dates. And sometimes, life gets in the way, right? I mean, sometimes people have schedules that don't allow, especially with 7 board members. But if you are determined to move that end date up, we could do that. I think it's reasonable to complete it at the beginning of April. I think pushing it into March would be tight. We could certainly talk about all those options, but we can move as fast as you want us to.
All right, yeah, my primary concern was, are we going too quickly? So.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I don't think you're going too quickly. I would rather you make your announcement before May. What starts to happen in May is that some folks say, you know what, I just can't leave my district. I can't give such short notice to my school district on May 10th and expect them to be able to manage and have good transition. So we start to lose some candidates, and we lose some candidates who are in multiple searches. So I don't think you're moving too fast or too slow. I think that would be the right timeline. Hector, Robin, anything to add on that?
Well said.
No, I think.
You mentioned 4 rounds of interviews. That's something you think you're probably unique with. And sort of when I heard you say it, maybe I was misheard, but there was a board level one, then a community level one, and then back to the board. So can you add a little clarification or context of how, I'm guessing there's some community engagement process before where you're gathering, information to create our candidate profile. So that the idea of having, how does having a community interview with the, I guess, finalist candidates, what kind of work do you do to ensure the confidentiality of those applicants?
Yeah, great. Robin, you want to take that?
Well, it is a confidential process, and so often there are more community members that want to engage in that than there's room for around the table. So there's a process around application to be on the community interview panel. That process includes signing confidentiality affidavits, committing to the full start to finish, not missing any part of it so that they can give feedback on every candidate who's a finalist. And that feedback goes to the board so that you understand how that set of community members perceived and received and interacted with the final candidates. But I think your question was around confidentiality. We do everything in our power. It is strongly emphasized. We hand everything out. We collect everything back. That is, that isn't to say there couldn't ever be a bad actor, but we haven't had one. So it's been our experience that people understand that their integrity matters, our integrity matters, the integrity of the board matters, and they really do hold the confidence, and that has worked well. Have I answered the question fully enough?
Yeah, I guess sort of the follow-up then, I guess, is my guess is our position will generate more applicants than the board has capacity to review. So when you make, for lack of a better term, a cut line, would we be seeing all of the applicants, just a curated list? And, you don't have a crystal ball, you can't predict the future. About how many do you generally think are on the cut line and how many do you think are in our finalist pool?
Yeah. So yes, you will see everything. And we have a deep value that this is your search, not ours. Our job is to make life easy for you. Our job is to juggle all the balls and manage all the pieces and have you operate at the high level. So we don't hide anything from you. So the way it actually works operationally is that let's say 30 people apply for your job. I think that these days is a good number to think about. We're not really looking for 60 or 70, but the truth is we want 30 high quality people. So we're more concerned with how many high quality folks do you have in your pool. I would say, thinking about recent searches of districts your size in Oregon, 30, and we would draw the line at 15. That doesn't mean that you wouldn't get to look at all 30, you would, but our team would say these 15 seem to most closely match the ideal profile that you've created. There are people of great talent, and we would sit down so that first round is the preliminary interview, where probably 2 of us would be engaged in interviewing those 15 candidates. While we're interviewing them, we are transcribing what they're saying. We are big believers. I know some other firms do like some sort of video interview where you get to watch a video. We don't actually think that's as valuable as actually allowing us to engage with the candidate. So we are actually engaging in real-time virtual interviews. We're taking notes. We're transcribing, actually.
We're transcribing.
Usually it's Robin or Hank, because we are super fast typers. So that role falls to us. And we will provide you as board members, you will get to see the transcript of those interviews. And you will make the selection of whom do you want to invite for a first round interview. And I will say again, you will get to look at all 30, and you always have the option to pull somebody from the other 15. And that has never happened, because we're pretty good at being able to demarcate and shoulder that sort of that piece of it, so that you're not necessarily having to read all 30 if you don't want. Some of you will want to read all 30. Some of you will say, hey, that's why we hired a team. Either way, you can select any of the candidates to move forward for a first round interview. And Robin was describing what happens after that first round interview. So if we do, let's say 15 in the prelim, does that make sense? And then we meet with you and you look at all 30, but you also look at our 15 and say, okay, of the 30 and the 15 that Hector and Robin and Hank and Kathleen suggested, we're going to pick 7 to do a first round interview. You'll do that. And then after that, you'll pick your finalists. And so the community interview that Robin was speaking about happens at that stage. So those, let's say 3 finalists come back. We recommend they do a community interview with the confidential stakeholders, as well as a second board interview. That's a typical sequence of interviews. The 4 interviews being preliminary, first round with the board, community stakeholder, and final interview.
Great. Anybody else, any of my colleagues have any other questions? Thank you guys very much. I don't know if you guys did your research or whatever, like looking me up online, but yeah, Hector, starting Tuesday, I'll be driving past you on my way between Arlington Heights and South Side.
Let me know if you need a cup of coffee.
And I graduated high school just to your west in Carroll Stream. So
Lombard?
Lombard North, yes.
Yes.
Awesome.
Wonderful.
And Robin, I just tore down the fence between where I'm hoping to live and Peter Bosco. So.
Is that right? Well, and I hate to drop names too much, but I also wanted to say that if any of you have students at Hillsboro High School, the library is named after my father-in-law. So they've been in the community forever.
That's awesome.
Thank you guys so much for your time tonight.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Have a
All
good
right.
evening. Good luck.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
We have 5 minutes before, well, I do expect 8 folks from the next one. So they have 8 people listed on the agenda that they would like to attend. So we will recess our meeting for 5 minutes. Folks from the Alma Advisory Group, do you have your entire group? Are you ready to go?
Hi there. Yes, we're ready to go.
Okay, we are back in session from recess. Everybody, welcome back. We have one final group to talk to tonight, the Alma Advisory Group. And we have your presentation up here in the room, and feel free to take it away whenever you're ready.
All right. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to meet you all. My name is Monica Santana Rosen. I'm the CEO and founder of Alma Advisory Group. I'm joined by my colleagues. If you wouldn't each mind just saying your names real quick. Kathleen.
Good evening. So delighted to be here. My name is Kathleen Sheverdecker. I've been part of Alma Advisory Group for the past 4 years, and I'm very excited to be part of the conversation and support of this very important search effort. Thanks for having us tonight.
Thanks, Kathleen. Janae.
Janae Harley. I've been part of Alma Advisory Group for a little over 2 years, and I thank you for the opportunity tonight.
Thank you, Nita.
Good evening, Nita Lasapunko, calling in from Dallas, Texas. I've been part of the Alma team for 2 years, supporting the executive searches.
And Sylvia.
Good evening. I'm Sylvia Flowers, also part of the Alma Advisory Group for the last 2 years, and excited to talk to you today.
Thank you so much. And I know we're on a time limit here, so we're going to move fairly quickly, and we can move on to the next slide. So just a little bit about Alma Advisory Group. We were founded 6 years ago, and all of our work has been really supporting school systems with really positioning school systems to attract, develop, inspire, engage an excellent workforce with the skills needed to meet the needs of their students. And perhaps more importantly, our focus has been on creating the conditions where people can really do their best work on behalf of the students that they serve. We're a mission-driven organization. Our roots were in and have been and continue in consulting and serving as partners with our clients. But we got into the executive search space now several years ago, and have learned that a lot of the systems that we built at scale, say, for example, when we were helping school systems develop new tools for teacher hiring, as well as principal hiring, that those same systems that produced excellent results there provided huge improvements in the diversity of hires and the retention of those hires, that those systems worked extremely well in the executive search function. So you'll see that our process has resulted in very diverse leaders stepping into roles in the nonprofit sector and in public education. We'll move to the next slide. So you've got here the images of the members of our team that would support this search. As you can see, I won't talk through everyone, but we're all practitioners in our work. We've all worked in education in various capacities. We have individuals who would focus on data analysis around the surveys that we would propose sharing with your community, individuals who would support project management, individuals who would support recruitment and screening, and individuals who would build the interview tools to support the entire process start to finish. Next slide. So what makes Alma Advisory Group unique and different? There are several things that really stand out within Alma Search. The first is that at the end of the day, the people with the most at stake in this decision shouldn't just get to have input in the process, they should be authentically engaged. Their stories, their lived experiences should matter more than anything else as you as a board are clarifying what is truly needed for this role. And so our focus on community engagement, it isn't just talk, it's not performative, it's at the core and heart of everything that we do. I'm very proud to be the daughter of immigrant parents and love that I can lead a monolingual Spanish community engagement session where people don't need translators. They can just speak in their own home language. So those kinds of things are very special to us. We also are very focused on managing bias. Bias is not something you can eliminate, but it is something that you can create a process that controls for it, where people are aware of their biases and are able to mitigate bias as much as possible. So happy to talk more about that. We have a proven track record of providing diverse and mission-aligned finalists to our boards. And we really work as partners with the board. We help the board as they navigate, find common ground, and come to make this decision, which is the most important decision that a board has to make, who your next superintendent will be. And finally, we really care a lot about transparency and access to the process. So helping people understand exactly what's occurring, when it's occurring, and how individuals' voices have informed every step of the process. We'll move on to the next slide. So why are we excited to work with the Hillsboro School District? You've had a superintendent who's been in place longer than many districts get to have. And so with a superintendent like yours leaving, it becomes this critical moment in time for the district. It's both an opportunity to look at things with a new perspective, to sort of take stock on where you are and where you're going, but also really important to understand all of the great things that have happened, the things that you want to protect and sustain as this superintendent leaves his post. In addition, your board is fairly stable as well. So we see some real consistent, stable leadership that's got some good historic knowledge that can really support the effective rolling out of this search. You're the fourth largest district in Oregon, which is exciting to us, not only because of your size, but also the diversity. It's a really unique community. 60% of your students identifying as students of color, so many different languages and rich cultures represented. We love that. We also love the connection that you have with not just your school system, but the connection that the district has as part of this larger community ecosystem with the Hillsboro Community Plan. So we love the acknowledgement of the education system as a core part of how you establish a strong and support and strengthen the community that you support. So we love that. And of course, all of the great work that's happened in the community, your funding, the bonds that have passed to support your long-range planning. So just so much to be excited about with Hillsboro. On to the next slide, please. So talk a little bit about Alma's process, and I'll start with just what our results have been. As you can see here, over 70, just shy of 70% of our finalists that we have presented across all of our searches have been leaders of color. Just shy of 80% of the individuals placed through our searches have been leaders of color. I want to be clear, we're not guaranteeing a leader of color or particular gender or ethnicity or race. What we are guaranteeing is a process that mitigates bias. And so when we are clear about the skills required in the role and we focus only on those skills, what we see is that more leaders of color emerge in those processes. You end up with a process that's actually more rigorous and challenging, and more leaders of color emerge at the same time, because in doing so, you eliminate a lot of the things that have worked against leaders of color in the past. And that's something that we really protect and hold dear. Move on to the next slide. So we understand that your hope is to have an offer ready to announce by April. We wanted to offer up a timeline here. You know, our goal would be to work pretty quickly with you to engage in stakeholder engagement, community engagement around this search. We want to build on any information you already know, the things you already have. And our goal would be to really spend January, right from the start, we would begin talking to potential candidates, but probably our top recruitment and screening would occur in February, with the hope that by March, we're getting to semifinalist and finalist round. From there, the hope would be that by April, you're able to make an offer and announce your candidate. Moving on. You know, just wanted to take a moment to talk a little bit about the role that we play versus the role that the board plays. We see our role as working to provide for you a strong, diverse talent pool, to ensure that your process is equitable, transparent, and rigorous. And we engage in candidates from the start to the end of the process. We support the board's final decision making as well. So as I mentioned earlier, what we look to the board to do is to help inform how we ensure that word is out for community engagement, that we're doing the right level of outreach, that we're engaging people who can really help us get people there. The board typically is who engages media throughout the process. And most importantly, you engage in all aspects of design, interview, selection of your final candidate. Moving on. There are a few things we try to be careful of as we go through the process. Happy to talk about this further, but mainly we want to make sure right from the start that the board is really aligned in the skills most needed for this role, that you're all working from a shared set of criteria. We're not getting halfway down the process and discovering that some people have different criteria from others. Spreading the word for the community is critical and challenging. If you have internal candidates, we want to make sure we treat them well through the process. So we'll want to talk through that. And we're managing subjectivity throughout the process. I feel like I've spoken about some of these other pieces, so I'm going to move us on in the interest of time. We just have a couple slides left. If you're able to provide supporting roles at the district, it helps us to have somebody at the district to help with project management, coordinating on the internal side. We also have our own project manager. We also would want to work very closely with either your communications team, or if you have a family and community engagement team, to support the communications planning for this process. And we also recommend communication support that's specifically focused on the board. If you can do it, the board's focus tends to be a little different than the district's. On to the next slide. And that's it. I got through it. I was watching the time, trying to make sure I stuck to the 15 minutes. I'm happy to go any direction you like. And I've got the whole team here as well to back me up in answering any of your questions. And I think we can take down the presentation too.
For what it's worth, we haven't been super strict on the times, but everybody's basically stuck to it. So, somebody have any questions for Alma and Associates? Erica.
I'll start. Just wanted to get your retention rates for your recruitment over the last 5 years. What has been the percentage of candidates still in those positions?
Yeah, so I don't have the exact numbers. We can follow up with that. I know that I can count on one hand the people that have left their roles. I know for all of our superintendent searches, 100% of them are still in their roles as well. But that's that exact statistic. I don't know if our team, if we have that number, that may be something that I'd have to follow up with afterward.
I guess tying into that a little bit, one of the other firms we discussed today also did some consultancy, and then so I think you mentioned the executive search stuff grew out of your consultancy practice. So for how long have you been doing executive searches?
I think we're going on 4 years now, almost been around 6 years. So it wasn't too long after we started that we got into executive search.
Questions?
Thank you very much for coming. Thrilled to see that you were the firm who did the city of Cincinnati, Cincinnati Public Schools. That is where I came to the Pacific Northwest from.
Oh, wow.
So that tells me a lot about your firm in and of itself. I am curious though about how you're going to handle confidentiality. We're pretty sensitive about the fact that there are a couple of other districts that are currently recruiting. We are of the top 4. One of the others that are recruiting right now is the one that's bigger than us. And so there's a lot of competition right now. And I just want to know how you would propose that we handle that.
Yeah. Sylvia, I want to give you a chance if you want to jump in. I'm happy to answer as well.
Yeah, definitely. So we, of course, believe in confidentiality, not only for the board, but also for our candidates who could be also in very sensitive positions themselves and not wanting to reveal their own candidacy for roles. So we take a lot of pride in protecting both sides of the house, so to speak. We will do everything we can to make sure that candidates feel safe in participating in this process and making sure that you have access to information that can be shared in a confidential way. We have gone as far as to have board and staff sign confidentiality agreements when it gets to the point that we're discussing candidates. And then if there's ever a need where we would need to discuss things in a public forum, we've also used identifiers to make sure that we're protecting the names of candidates if we have to discuss them in a public forum in our debrief sessions.
Yeah. The only other thing I'll add in terms of competition is that we're really checking with our candidates and trying to, to Sylvia's point, ensure that they're sharing with us if they're looking at other roles or progressing as finalists in other roles. So that's something that we'll be looking at. We'll also really want to understand, we'll be talking to candidates about what makes your district unique. And so we'll be working together with you to be as detailed and rich as we can. And so as an example, when we led the Denver public school search, actually none of our finalists, so I think there were about 6 or 7, Kathleen, neighboring districts doing superintendent searches at the same time. None of our finalists were finalists in any of those searches because Denver Public Schools wanted something really different. And we were able to talk to the candidates about that. We would expect something similar here.
My next question is really about community engagement. We have the intent of involving our community significantly in this. And we have a majority minority district that we are very proud of. And so are you staffed up and ready, or how would you handle mainly a Spanish speaking population in which we would have to handle all of our community meetings?
Yeah. So we love that. We have worked with several districts in similar situations. Denver Public Schools was one that had a very large Spanish speaking population. And, the great thing was that we could hold meetings in Spanish, that I could go up, and if I were addressing the community, I could make our statements both in English and in Spanish. And we have, but there are other languages and other cultures. And so we might want to work with the district as well, just to see. We do usually work with the district to have translation services where needed. But when it comes to Spanish speaking, that's something that we're really proud that we can support. In terms of staffing for community engagement, and Janae, Nita, Kathleen, Sylvia, all of us have been facilitators What we normally do is create what we call community gatherings, where we try to get as many people to come as possible. And then we have ALMA facilitators who work with small groups of individuals. So we try to have sort of roundtable type discussions where we can really sit down and talk to people about their experiences. We can do those virtually and in person. So ALMA can easily have 12 people on our side available to facilitate those conversations if needed. But the small group discussions are really important to us. In addition to the community gatherings, we would like to have focus groups with teachers, principals, staff, students. Kathleen's favorite are the students, parents, and community leaders and community members. So we can also decide where there are certain community groups where a focus group makes more sense rather than the larger community gathering setting. So that's something we're happy to talk more about. We also really come back and engage community very thoughtfully in the finalist stage of the process. And that's another place where community members will come back and say they really felt that their input was honored, that they were truly able to participate in the process.
Other questions, Monique or Patrick? I don't see their hand pop them up, right? Okay.
I just had one question around your price structure, your cost proposal, and can you explain a little bit more about the percentage cost versus, just a total cost?
Yeah, absolutely. So, so the percentage fee is what typical executive search firms do. And what you'll typically see is some range between 33 to 35% of total compensation. What we do is 32% of the expected base salary. It's really connected to our expected time and effort, which frankly for superintendent searches, we kind of end up giving a lot of our time and effort, blood, sweat, and tears, if you will, to ensure the success of the search, especially, with our time differences. We'll be online into late evening hours, early mornings where we need to be. We're available around the clock. So our price structure is really based on what more traditional search firms offer. What I'll say is, because I'll just name that we typically are among the higher priced firms that districts will consider. And our service is just completely different. It's not a traditional search. We're not doing just a couple town halls so that we can say we did them. We are designing with you every step of the interview activities. So we're working with you to craft performance-based, competency-based questions that get at the heart of what you're looking for, really have candidates demonstrate who they are, how they make decisions, what they value. We are excellent facilitators. So as you're trying to really parse through everything you've learned about your candidates, we're able to help you make sense of it and help you stay true to the values that you established at the very start of the process. The other thing that we do that's not typical for a search firm is we carry out anti-bias training for every single person who participates as an interviewer in the process and for the full board. So bias is something that's woven throughout our process. It's why we have the results that we have. And that's what you get when you invest in an ALMA search. So I think I may have gone above what you were asking, but wanted to explain a little, not just what it was, but also why it is what it is.
Thank you. Yeah, that's helpful. The other question that I had was on your recruitment strategies. What are so you mentioned you've been doing superintendents for the last 4 years. So what are the networks that you're tapping in to recruit or get candidates?
Yeah, so I'm sorry, just to clarify, we've been doing superintendent searches for the last 2 years now, executive search overall for the last 4 years. Let's see, so I'm sorry. So you were asking about our recruitment approach. So I'll open it up to see if someone else on the Alma team wants to answer that question.
Definitely, I can jump in there. So first of all, we cast a wide net. So we will certainly post the position in many of the public places that you would naturally think of, LinkedIn, Indeed, and what have you. And then, of course, we'll be targeting specific education organizations and education associations for administrators who are looking for their next opportunity. And then, of course, we're looking for people who may not be looking for an opportunity. So we're going to tap into our own networks of educators. We're all former educators and leaders in districts and across the country. And so we'll be using our own Rolodex to identify candidates who may or may not be looking for opportunities. The other thing about an Alma search is that we don't typically have a start and stop date for when we're accepting candidate applications. We keep the conversations going up until you sign on the dotted line, because we know that we're getting into a busy search season. So we want to keep pounding the pavement and making sure that we have not missed a great candidate in the initial start of the search. So that's a little bit about what we do from a recruitment strategy perspective.
Questions from my colleagues? You mentioned the Eugene School District, your work with the Eugene School District and the RFP response. I appreciate that. The language is a little different than saying completed, as you mentioned, the Alma. So if you want to add context there, great. If not, I get it. But I'm curious, what other work experience do you guys have in Oregon?
Yeah, so Eugene was our only Oregon search. Is that right, Sylvia? I think
Yes.
even the national nonprofits, we didn't have any others that were based in Oregon. I would have to go back to see what the language was on the Eugene search. It was not an easy search. I think the board really struggled a lot early on to get alignment around what they were looking for. And we had to have some pretty hard conversations with them. We led a planning retreat with them, and it was a successful search. We closed the search, and their superintendent actually identifies as Native American. But it was, for us, if there's any hesitation, it was not a unanimous vote, and we would have preferred a unanimous vote at the end of the day, someone everyone could get behind. And all of that is public information, so I don't feel that I'm sharing anything that I can't share. What I will say is they're a really passionate group of people who are all focused on equity for their students, and it was an honor to work with them through that process. But if we had to, we had a lot of reflections after that search, but it was a completed search at the end of the day.
So you mentioned planning retreat, that kind of dovetails into my next question. You also mentioned time zones and whatnot. How much of the work do you see involved with us is on-site here in Oregon or virtual?
We can make those decisions together. Usually the majority of the search is done remotely for us. We don't have to be there, but there are key moments where it really helps to have us on site. So definitely community engagement. We would bring at least 3 team members there to be in person with people as much as possible. We typically meet with the board about twice a month, and most of those meetings can be done virtually. Where we might come in person is if we do want to have like a planning retreat as you're sorting through your goals for the search, carrying out anti-bias training, deciding on the competencies and skills required for the role. We've had several boards that have opted to do a full day Saturday retreat to do that. But we've had other boards where actually all of it, has been done online and virtually as the conditions of the pandemic have ebbed and flowed, those things have changed. But those would be decisions we could make with you as we go.
Great. Thanks. You mentioned the bias training, which sounds fantastic. I would say, dovetailing with what Erica mentioned, okay, don't have a delicate way to put it, so here you go. You're roughly 3 times as expensive as the other firms we're talking to. Anti-bias training, that's a great differentiation. What else makes it worth it to spend 3 times as much?
Yeah. And that's really what I was addressing earlier. I mean, the bottom line is we don't know how the other firms do it as inexpensively as they do. This is the most important job you're going to have to fill as a board. And frankly, we feel our price is low for that time and effort we know we're going to put in. I think other firms have a lot more searches they're doing all at the same time. I can't really speak to why their prices are what they are. What I can tell you is that our approach is incredibly thoughtful from the start, that we are partners with you and your community, that we're focused on managing bias, that we're not just bringing you candidates and having you just interview them and decide. We're actually intentionally designing with you every step of recruitment, screening, and selection, and building those tools with you, for you, every step of the way. So creating the interview questions, developing performance tasks, things that are performance-based and competency-driven that help you make excellent decisions with your eyes wide open. And we're helping you use the information gained to then determine what does that mean for the kinds of supports your leader will need once they're on the job. And we don't have, as Sylvia kind of hinted at earlier, we're not concerned about the time that we're spending with you. So we're around the clock available. Each of you will have our cell phones. We'll be on the phone on the weekends, Saturdays, evenings, if needed, whatever it is to help you make the best possible decision. So, you'd have to judge for yourself what's worth the price point. I don't know how I just don't think what we do compares to what other firms do. I just think our process is way more robust, but you'd have to decide on your own based on your conversations with the other firms.
Any other questions from my colleagues? Thank you guys so much for being here. I'm sure you're all staying up kind of late. Sorry you guys ended up being the last one we talked to. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight.
Thank you too. It was a pleasure to meet you all. We wish you the very best with your search.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Right. Next item on our agenda is the post-interview discussion. Yeah. We would like the printed input from your colleague. Okay. As I mentioned earlier, Ian cannot be with us tonight, but you've filled out an online already. Yeah, it probably didn't make sense to talk while I'm here, but yeah, so already mentioned that. Let's go in order. Really, human capital. For Ray and Associates, I would say her 30 out of 50, 15 out of 30, 10 out of 20 comments. Lack of a plan regarding robust community stakeholder engagement. Seems like there are a lot of add-on fees not included in the package price.
That was for Ray.
That was for Ray. That was what she had to say about Ray. Human capital was next. 45 out of 50, 30 out of 30, 15 out of 20, and the comments are clear and thorough. I like the fact that their firm is led by HR professionals, has worked with districts similar in size to Beaverton. Half of the consultants will be based in the Pacific Northwest, which is good.
And that's human capital. I'm sorry.
That's human capital. Is that?
I keep missing the very beginning of the.
Sorry, human capital. That was human capital. Trying to go in order. I've already done.
Great.
So, and on Alma, 25 out of 50, 15 out of 30, 0 out of 20 on the cost aspect. And the comments are not as thorough as the other RFPs that have been submitted. So I appreciate the gender, racial, ethnic diversity the team brings. They lack team members based in the Pacific Northwest, Pacific Blue Oregon to understand the complexities and nuances of our community. And the estimated cost of $83,200 is extremely high compared to the other RFPs, 3 or 4 times the fees of other firms. All right, so that kicks off a little bit of discussion. Does anybody have something they'd like to add?
I guess, do you have like an envisioned structure for how you want us to do that now?
No.
Okay, like top 2, is there ones that we already know?
Yeah, I can.
Focus our discussion.
I can fairly get to the my top 2, but I don't know. I don't want to influence anybody's.
I think that would be the first question. Does everybody feel like they have a top 2?
Yes.
Yeah, yes.
We are all just, it's just us Hillsboro folks now, right?
Yeah.
I was, yes, a good way would be to just eliminate
There's
some.
one member of the public.
Sure, that's fine. As much as I appreciate what Alma brings to the table, I can't see us spending 4 times the amount on a search. I would say that, yeah.
Can I interject just
Sure,
on their cost
absolutely.
proposal there? It was the most expensive, but it didn't include any of the travel that they were talking about doing. That
It's gonna
would
be
be,
5 times.
that would be.
My guess of 4 times as low.
Advertising. It was other-
Okay.
I was trying to like comb through there and see, what was included. There's also not any mention of a guarantee. Like
Right, exactly.
you sign, you pay us and we're gone. So that retention piece was kind of missing out of.
Yeah.
Those are just parts of the cost piece that I noticed.
Let me just say, I was not I did not have them as one of my top 2. They impressed me because the recruitment in Cincinnati, Denver, and then there was another one that I looked through.
Yeah.
Those were very complex. Those are districts that have a very large African-American population, which across the country tends to be a little bit more political. So the fact that they cost more, that didn't surprise me. Because the search in Cincinnati and Denver, I'm sure was probably about $100,000. Based on what they had to deal with, how long it took, the whole 9 yards. So that I just didn't feel like, as much as I would love to hire Black women, I'm not sure that's what we need for this community. There were others that spoke to me that said, no, you know what our community needs. You know it.
Right. Combined lack of Oregon experience with
Yes.
an extremely high price tag. I don't know that I can justify the voter.
Well, they're based in Chicago, so that told me a lot right there.
I'll say that, I scored them higher after hearing them speak than I did on the original paper, so.
Absolutely agree.
And so I agree that justifying the cost for us, especially if it's another good option. So I feel comfortable if the online people also feel comfortable taking Alma off the table and going down to the other tree. Feel good about that?
Monique or Patrick, do you have anything to add about that? About us maybe just focusing on the remaining 3?
I don't have any problem with that. I couldn't hear all of what Lisa was saying, but I tend to agree. I think that they are super expensive and I think we should take them off the table.
Patrick?
Yes. I just say at the outset, because of an unexpected family matter, I didn't get to hear all of the first presentation. So I'm just here to provide input on the other presentations that I did get to hear. But I'm put a lot of weight on what you have to share about the first presentation. But I definitely agree that all of the candidates were very impressive, but I do not think that Alma is necessarily the right fit for our district.
Yeah, we'd be well served by any one of these firms. Like, I don't think we can make a bad choice,
I
frankly.
agree.
So and with that in mind, like, I just can't.
Ready to get rid of another one? Or would I-
Sure. Okay.
Of the remaining 3, my lowest one was Ray. I thought they seemed really nice and everything, but, I didn't feel like it was quite as personalized for us. I didn't feel like they put a lot of time and effort to research in our district or even into the presentation, on which there were multiple errors, and I was not impressed. So I would rather take them off.
Yeah, sorry. Anybody yet? So, if you can't hear online, Lisa,
Yeah.
is that?
I was trying to be loud.
I would sort of agree that my top two are McPherson and Human Capital. And if everybody's comfortable not including Ray past this cut line, if people want to advocate for Ray, I'm happy to have that conversation.
Of the three that I got to hear, Human Capital is definitely seemed the strongest to me. So I'm on board with that.
Does anybody want to keep Ray in the discussion?
Nope, I'm fine with taking them out as well.
All right.
Similar reasons for Lisa.
Yeah. We're down to two. And it's tough between those two, in my opinion. Like I got the, as we talked about in the last board meeting, we were going to try to cut down to 4 or 3 or whatever. And when we realized it was just 4, we had our meeting to do, but there was no cut to be made. And, but Michelle made an excellent point in there that, the idea of, the Pacific Northwest connection, and it makes a lot of sense, and I saw that in both of the presentations. And it's not necessarily that the qualified candidate has to come from Oregon, but I think understanding Oregon is kind of important in a search like this.
Well, if they both have a person on their team that work in our district.
Or more than one.
Yeah.
Or more than.
Or worked in, sure, yeah.
I do want to share with you my greatest concern about human capital is I wasn't convinced when he told me, well, no, it'll be really, really good because we're doing them and you. Somehow that just did not give me the warm fuzzies.
Yeah. I felt dissatisfied with that response too. I think they did their best, but I think they were surprised that it was a concern of ours, but it is.
Yes, and it was interesting that they were surprised that we thought that was a concern. And I'm thinking, okay, and you even tried to say it. You tried to lay it out for them, and they still didn't get it. And I'm like, okay, I just think that because they are ahead of the game, I was simply not comfortable with the idea that they were conducting the search for 2 out of the top 4 largest school districts simultaneously. To me, I'm not sure I'm getting the warm and fuzzies on that. Not at all.
I see it the other way around, because then I see it, they're already 2 months ahead. They've been putting announcements and feelers out for Pacific Northwest.
Okay.
So by the time we get in, all of the people that they've already been in contact with, we also get that access to that pool as well.
Which I think is a little bit of what he was trying to say.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's one of the other things that I was thinking about, like, is it really like that much of a big deal that we have 2 firms also competing against each other versus one that's serving us both? I feel like that you can kind of think about it both ways. So for me, I didn't see it as a big issue, really.
It's less of a concern for me after all these discussions than it was before we got here. That was the big question I sort of had before we got here was, what are we going to end up with somebody whose second choice was Hillsboro? And I can't remember which firm sort of brought this up, but mentioning the timeline and choosing in April, it was related to not going into May because people are probably applying for more than one job. So it was definitely more of a concern coming about all we're going to do is get that people who don't end up being, but yes, I think if you are a high quality candidate who's considering Oregon and you don't live in Oregon and they're both available, you're probably going to apply for both.
But I was also going to say, like, let's not discount our reputation versus the other competing districts' reputation.
True.
Where would you rather work? If you had a choice, you would come here. That's all I'm saying.
Now, the other thing I will say that, and somebody help me if I've missed it, but I thought McPherson and Jacobson, I remembered exactly when he said 85% of their placements stay. Yeah. And he knew exactly how long they've been there. And I was like, writing it down like, that's impressive. But nobody else seemed to track that, which I thought was the oddest thing.
But then they're doing it so much longer.
Well, so yes, that they said since 2016, they believe that 100% stayed. But like when we asked about like stats around like the diversity, they were like, oh, well, Beaverton was really diverse. I think it's because they're newer. But I have found myself less impressed in terms of like their ability to attract a large pool, human capital, because they didn't have like the data. I really like McPherson. We're like, here are our numbers. We've been successful over a much longer period of time in a lot of the ways that we're looking for stability, retention, diversity.
Yeah. I know. I do have it. Oh, Monique, go ahead.
Thanks. I tend to agree with what you guys. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I agree with what is being said regarding human capital and McPherson Jacobson. I really was impressed with the first presentation. I thought that they were well detailed in their facts and figures and their communication and their question and answer session, very detailed in their answers. And I had the same concerns and feelings that Lisa did concerning human capital, for what I could hear.
I also wanted to add though, like one of the things that I like both of them.
Yeah.
But one of the things is that Gus is part of their team, but Gus was one of the recruitments by human capital. So they recruited really big superstars. Human capital recruited Gus and PPS, which are like when you think about superintendents in our region and area, they were the ones that got them. So that's kind of for me. I was also thinking about like.
So what does it say if they found Gus and he works for the other one?
That's what I was thinking about. And okay, so let me throw this out, and you guys.
But they found it.
That's true. They did. So one thing that made me uncomfortable, and you helped correct me or redirect me, but the idea that the superintendent of Beaverton was sitting right there, I just automatically had discomfort with regard to confidentiality. Because I thought, do I really want for some reason, I feel like there's competition between it. And the idea that the superintendent of Beaverton, that was the only thing that made me pause on McPherson and Jacobson. That I thought, I don't know how I feel about that. So I'm asking you guys how you feel about that.
His love for Hillsboro is pretty well known.
Well, what it means is like, what if one of his members wants to apply without him knowing?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, hopefully they have the kind of relationship, right? If he's still thinking, maybe that's still like in development. I think that's what you mean, Nancy, that.
Yeah, I don't know. The skin on the back of my neck goes up.
Yeah.
I'm just not sure. I don't know if that's good thing or bad.
In that same regard of that question, I do like the makeup of human capital being HR professionals and superintendents versus not having that specialty in the other two. And I will close with my only other thing is that McPherson said, Mike cannot help us in the search because of a conflict.
Yeah.
I thought that was a good thing though.
What if we choose a different one? Can Mike help us?
Oh, that's Mike. So as I mentioned at the outset, Mike will be a resource to us no matter what, a resource to the board. He will not work on McPherson's they have, so that's, I think,
they can't pay.
I don't know if they have HR professionals or whatever at McPherson and they just didn't bring them because I think their team is deeper than we saw.
Well, I asked them and they said there's only 3 ladies in Nebraska that are doing all the.
That are in the office. Everybody else is distributed around the country is what I got from that. So yes, Mike will be all the cabinet, Mike will be a resource to the board as they always are, but he will not be in service. And you heard from, was it human capital? Like Robin and Hector are not working on this. It's much like that. Like Mike has done consultancy work for McPherson and he will not work on ours, much like Robin isn't working on Salem Kaiser. Kelly, I want to give you a chance to jump in. I think
okay. I have some few things that that kind of popped out to me for both. For the human capital, I think one thing that kind of rubbed me the wrong way is how they were talking about their approach for a diverse candidate. Kind of their words were like, it'll just happen based off of the reputation of Hillsboro. But I think we can all agree that's not how a diverse look upon finding a candidate works. Because like even at 17 in the Hillsboro School District, not for a job for the district, but I've been rejected simply because of I'm not a man, even though I've been more qualified than other people for the position. So I think we all can agree that that's not how it works. So I think that was like a red flag for me. That is a strange approach to do things, like that's just going to happen because of your guys' reputation of being HSD. But I did like that they do have a lot more eyes on their applications versus McPherson. But McPherson does have deep-rooted connections in Hillsboro School District and in Oregon. I think it would be really nice to see a superintendent born and raised in Oregon, or, you know, grown through HSD, or just like with roots in Oregon or Hillsboro directly would be really cool. But again, one thing is they did touch on their approach for diversity, but I do think actions speak louder than words. And in their 15-person team, there's only one woman. So I think that just kind of looking at the number wise kind of spiked to me as well.
For which one?
McPherson, the first one. They talked very briefly about diversity, but again, only one woman on a 15-person team nationally was a little iffy to me. So I think that's just one concern to look at both and make sure that when the board is working with them to make sure that that's because you know, Hillsboro School District, that's one of our big priorities. Right. So
Good observation. Good observation. Good observation.
Say more about where you found 15 and not empty.
They talk about, I believe it was around 15. On one of their slides, they go through who's working locally versus nationally.
Okay.
And if you look into it, the one woman that joined us today was the only one.
I will add that for a lot of these jobs, especially jobs like these positions, it's a lot of the networking and who are you reaching out to and inviting or letting them know about the opportunity. And I do feel like McPherson's has a lot more of that relationships out there and networks just because of the experience of the people that were here and the reputation of the people that were here. So that speaks of, like, if they reach out to you and call you and say, Hillsboro's hiring, you know that they're already reaching out to really qualified people that they know of that are here locally or in the region. I think they really focus on the region, which I think, to Kaylee's point, they're not thinking they're going to transplant someone from, you know, another state. They really believe that the talent is already here and we just need to, like, look in our area. So I really like that about them. But again, human capital found the one. So
I see the slide with 15 Northwest consultants on. I guess if you include the 3 women in the office in Iowa, but I think they're much bigger than that. Those are just the Oregon and Washington.
but there's still just one more. There's still, right.
Yeah.
And the one, in his words, it was the 3 ladies that work in the office.
Didn't love that.
Also,
Didn't love that.
Now, I will say that McPherson has, like, they even said it in their thing. They're like, they have 940 superintendent type placements. That's a lot. That's a long time in the game.
And I get that their percentage was like 85, but from how long have they been doing it?
They've been doing it for a
That's
long
a very good number versus human capital. Yeah, it's 100%, but maybe 2016,
6 years, right?
Exactly.
So that's.
And oh, by the way, I'm just gonna say it, Guadalupe is not the most popular person. And he doesn't have the best reputation, and he's not really well liked, and I'm really worried about that. I'm just saying.
I think there was a slight difference between McPherson's cost and human capital's cost, but I don't feel like it's a reason to swing either way. Michelle, can you help me out there?
I would direct you guys to the proposals for human capital and the things that they consider additional services, and the way that they itemize them. So you can see the coordination, management, facilitation, synthesis of feedback of a community stakeholder panel take place prior to finalist interviews. And I think they spoke to that, but that's not included in the price. It's $400 for a panel of 12 stakeholders. A Spanish language stakeholder panel is also available, so I'm assuming that would double the cost. And then B3 is additional Latino outreach TBD. So there's like a little bit of, feels like a little bit of a barrier, or that those would be add-on things that we would be needing to direct them to do, that it's not just an automatic course of action.
I will say that I love that Mike Pearson has a price match on the proposal.
Are both of them the ones who sort of guarantee if they don't
Yes.
stay for whatever,
Yes.
they're gonna redo it?
Yes,
Or just whatever?
yeah, I wrote that down.
Okay, so
2 years.
so he-
Both of them offered a 2 years.
So human capital is more expensive on their base, and it appears that they have more add-ons. So the McPherson base seemed unbelievably low to me. And then it says, will not to exceed 32 grand-ish, right? So,
But even
it's-
the base for human capital is 34, so, yeah.
what's that?
The base for human capital is 34.
Right, so McPherson is saying the most it's gonna be is 32, and human capital is saying we're gonna start at 34.
I mean, it really is. I mean, the price variance at this point,
Yeah.
there's a top two.
Yeah,
It's not really-
yeah.
I do.
When I first started looking at this, I thought we were gonna be around 60. So almost upwards of 100 with all the add-ons.
I don't think we're going to be too far away from 50 when it's all said and done.
Right,
I don't want to be near 100, nowhere near. I would like to keep it under 50 if we can. But I do think that when we look at some of our needs are going to be, by the time we get done, I think we're going to be closer to 50. But that looks differently when we start at 35 as opposed to when we start at 21. And you guys help me. I thought that the reason why the McPherson proposal was so low was because they're more so based here or closer, or did anybody else get that?
Gustavo, if Gus and Marina are assigned the project, they're right.
But the travel is still additional in the other
Yeah.
proposals, though, so I'm not sure that that's.
Okay, well, then that's, I'm not, that forget it, that's a here nor there. I get it, I'll take that off.
Okay.
Oh, I just wanted to mention one thing. When McPherson was talking, I'm not sure that they gave timelines of like their last recruit for superintendent in Oregon. I believe it was in 2020, but I would say that there might be a benefit of going with a team that does have a local and national one, like human capital, because of the state of the workforce right now. They were saying that they get about 20 applicants or something. And I think you were talking a few board meetings ago about how difficult it was to find applicants for a board member position. And so I think that would be lowered substantially for a superintendent. So maybe something that human capital would have to offer is a wider range of applicants.
But you
I
do
think
know that,
that's-
you do know that the older, larger firms,
McPherson's huge.
yeah, they're huge.
Oh, okay.
Like 100, so like if you, do you have the book?
I wrote that, like, they have deep connections agencies, so I figured most of their applicants would be coming from Oregon.
No.
Okay.
No. They've got over 130 consultants across the country and.
Okay.
Certainly, I thought human capital would be a little bit more probably in the end, but I don't think it's a consequential amount more to disqualify that rate. Like, I don't feel like that, whereas Alma was a deciding factor for me in the con, I don't know that I can pick a preference for the two of them based on cost.
Even just like looking at the proposal and trying to think, like if I didn't, without the interview, if I would just look at the proposal, I think that human capital did a better job at being specific to West Hillsboro versus this one doesn't really talk about our community a lot. I mean, in person, they know us, they have a relationship.
Yeah.
But if we hadn't been here in person and I would have only done the paper, I would have scored them lower because I felt like they weren't talking specifically about Hillsboro. It was just kind of generic what they do. They talked about their mission, but they didn't talk about ours.
They're my top two on paper before we got here, and almost boosted themselves up higher than Ray, I guess, technically, but with the presentation. Lisa?
So I keep going back and forth with different points that keep working. And I started favoring with Pearson, and I think that's where I'm at right now as well. However, the biggest concern that's been raised, and I'm hoping maybe for other people speak to the concern of having us on that team if you're a visiting employee, like how do you feel about applying as a neighboring district person? Like, is that a concern, do you think, or?
When I said that, I'm looking for guidance from our older members. And for Monique, I'm not sure how you feel about it. Patrick, I'm not sure how you feel about it, but you guys have been in the game longer, but it didn't feel right to me. Sure. Yet I know this guy I know he's like, he's impressive.
One reason why I love Mike is because he's so great at fostering.
Yeah.
Really.
Right, but I want to know what you guys think.
And Mike's timing had been different.
Cabinet people,
Gus
I
worked
want to
5
know
years.
what you think. Cabinet people.
I think that Mike is very great leader, and he would, foster us to do something that we want to do. He was very supportive of Dale. He saw that as a growth opportunity, and being a colleague and as close with Gus as he is, I'm sure that is a similar belief. It's very similar leadership style. So that's not a concern for me, even though we talk about it.
That's good to hear.
That's more of a collegial goal that we have. I don't see that. I'd love to hear, especially from Connor, that one.
The HR professional in the room.
Yeah. So quiet this whole picture.
Well, I think one of the things that I think about is when going through this process, and I know I've just been listening and hearing things about the female representation on the team, the not having bias and thinking through those processes. I think it's really important for us to be thinking about when I think about the different teams, they're bringing different skill sets to the table. I think the Pearson and John Jacobson team does have a lot of knowledge around the work of the superintendent because they come with that lens through their journey.
Yes.
And so when they're focused on that understanding of what the scope of the work is, and they have lived that work, they understand that work. I think on the flip side with the HR capital, they are looking at it from also an HR lens and then bringing in some of the superintendents. So they're thinking through things in a different way. I guess it's just a matter of how they approach, the work and thinking about the lens of superintendency and the scope of that work, but also the hiring processes to get a superintendent on this side. So that's what I see as a comparison between the two. I think the one thing that stood out to me was that when it comes down to this, we're here to think about the next leader and how they're going to serve our students, and how I hear a lot of what's your reputation for having someone stay in their position for a long time? And I think that's it's a boulder of what our focus is. And so I think we want someone who is in this for the long haul. And those would be, hopefully the questions that they would be asking and thinking through those processes.
Can I ask a follow-up around, we know, one of the things I did like about Alma was doing anti-bias training for anyone that's in part of the hiring process. Is that something that we could do internally for ourselves?
Yeah.
Even if we don't, that the consultant doesn't offer it?
Yeah, I think that would be an important thing, thinking about anti-bias. I think as a superintendent, folks that stand in that space, they understand confidentiality because they have to hold a lot of confidential information in the work that in the scope of work that they do. And yes, we could.
And I would add that I would have the consultant that we pick go through that training too.
Yeah, or maybe that's a part of the follow-up is
Or at least have a serious conversation.
Yeah, what kind of anti-bias confidentiality training have you had, and what do you use to keep that lens as a part of your focus as you're looking forward?
It's a lot more expensive to bring Dr. Marks up.
Yeah.
Let me ask everybody this question. Would we be talking and feeling differently if human capital wasn't currently doing the Salem Kaiser recruitment?
It's less of a factor for me than what I got.
I don't think so.
It still matters to me though.
My bigger hangups are other things now. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I noticed you carefully didn't weigh in on the subject of how would Gus approach one of his employees applying for our job. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think he's new in his role, so he doesn't have, he's coming into it new. And so he doesn't know all the scope of the work. I mean, are you talking about folks that are in Beaverton applying for this position?
Yeah, like, does having Gus part of our search team discourage potentially qualified applicants in Beaverton from applying for the job because their names will be exposed to Gus?
I don't think so, because I think if they're ready to take that next step, they're going to let him know as their supervisor, just like if we were wanting to step into this, we would let our supervisor know, because that's going to be part of the reference checks and things like that. And we know that in the streamlined process, when we apply for a job in education, they're always going to contact your direct supervisor. So I think they would probably be letting him know that they're interested in that next step potentially.
And when we first brought it up, it was more of a concern to me than when you pointed out how supportive Mike was of Dale. That's like, I think, always be training your replacement. Like, always be training your replacement. Like, that's just.
So I think back to like the weighing of the two, one of the concerns that I have is around innovation of recruitment and also just like the process for McPherson. And like, they're like, it has worked for so long, so just keep working, or it's the way that we do it. And like, that doesn't really feel too good for me. I feel like has to be intentionality around like the efforts around TPI and like what you do in that space. And if we're really having any specific strategies, I mean, Alma definitely spoke to that a lot. But of course, that's like that's the essence of right, the essence of who they are and what they do. So we're trying to figure out how do we supplement that, or if there's strengths in another one that, like, what can we supplement ourselves as a board that maybe it's okay if they don't do that, we put in the work to do that, or and it's
good.
Well, to your point, what I was thinking is that the one thing that, not the one thing, but McPherson and Jacobson, whatever their name is, they said it 3 or 4 times. This is your search. You do this how you want to. You are hiring this person. Our job is to facilitate and to bring the candidates to you. Now, if Mark and Lisa and Francesca and Kana get together and they tell them this is what we want, and we know we want diversity, I believe that they would deliver that.
Yeah, but you're also paying for their expertise in this field, that you would expect that they would bring strategies.
Yeah, 85%.
Right.
Still, yeah. To your point, who's that?
And he's
sorry, it's in the white background. I can't see it. Oh, took it down. Oh, all right. Monique, you have something you want to add?
No, actually, I was just pointing out because Audra had her hand up, so I was wanting to hear what you had to say.
I appreciate that, Monique. It was earlier regarding the Gus comment, and just I had just wanted to share, knowing who Mike and Gus are as humans and their approach to developing leaders. I don't think we would need to be worried about that component of the search. They are truly about developing people into these roles, and so they are probably. Again, I think Gus is very similar in that respect. I have a future leader certificate signed by him for the first future leader class that I ever went through because he convinced me to go through it. So I think he is about cultivating people, and I'm sure he's doing the same thing in Beaverton. So I don't think there'd be a hesitation there. And I appreciate Monique noting my hand up. But I will stop now. And now Fran has her hand up, so I'm going to let everybody know that too.
Okay. Go, Fran, go.
Go, Fran.
I was going to echo exactly what Audrey was saying. I don't think I trust Mike. It's part of the reason why many of us are in the positions that we're in, and to know that he values us at the level that he does. As my children's superintendent showing up, I think that's where my shock and awe came in. I'm like, well, what? I'm in the wrong meeting. But there was one thing we all are looking at this through our own lenses, and I'm just here to give my thought. One thing that he did say when he was talking was about diversity and about, don't worry about it. I speak Spanish and I can hold those meetings. And I don't, just for something that people think about, the level of how much work we've done with our equity work, we know that it's not just language and being able to bring a cultural broker because we speak the same language. We all know on the screen that it goes way beyond that. And so just something I wanted to throw out. And now I'm going to sit quietly and look at Audra and Monique.
To your point, Eric, about the implicit bias training, I think a couple of the firms, maybe it was these two, and Mike is actually in our conversations, have sort of pointed out that yes, it is our process, and I think we heard it from at least one or two of them, that the ability to sort of mix and match things that you've heard tonight that you like is always on the table. So if there's something that we've heard from a firm that we don't choose that we think has value, we can ask whomever we do choose to, how do we, and maybe it's another cost and we have to evaluate whether or not we can afford it or not, but right. So, but yes, the ability to take things from, like, we didn't think about something like bias training before the interview. I didn't think about that. So yes, the ability to mix and match is a thing. Yeah.
I think the thoughtful steps that you can take prior to going into the actual interviews are going to be very important. I did appreciate that about Alden talking about that. I think an orientation about what's expected of the team and their roles in the process. I always hold an orientation the day before. We go through a confidentiality and bias overview of things. And then everyone knows what questions they're asking also during the process. They're assigned ahead of time so that helps everyone be at ease and also get the best out of the candidates. And you can take this to whatever degree that you want and do what you need to do so that you feel firm in your decision when it comes down to determining who is going to be moving forward into that role.
I think I'm leading McPherson.
Anybody
Anybody else leaning any other way?
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate the fact that both of them had a Latino person on their team. And that to me meant it spoke volumes because it says that they understand where we are. And I'm really hoping if you asked me who to choose, I would say McPherson and Jake. That's what I would say.
Ask online.
Who's that?
Ask online the same question.
Oh, yeah. Are you guys leaning through all this discussion? You're getting to 8:45. Patrick or Monique, are you leaning either way, or do we still need to just keep running down which we prefer?
I'm leaning with McPherson Jacobson.
Patrick, anything?
I went in thinking McPherson was the stronger written materials, and I missed a portion of McPherson's presentation. So I'm inclined to go with what the majority who saw both presentations in full suggest, but just based on the written, what I can compare, McPherson I thought had the slight advantage in my view.
What did she ask for?
Oh, perfect. Like McPherson was the only one she gave a perfect score to. Lisa, did you say you were leaning
I
towards one?
started to lean the other way, but I've been
Yeah.
going back for a couple times, so whatever. Let's do Pearson and stuff. So, ready for the motion?
But I want to make sure that no matter what we do,
Let's do it.
I want to go back to what Mark said. If there's something that we want, whomever we pick, we make them do what we want them to do.
That's what the 10th is for. That's what January 10th is for.
Okay, let's do it. Great.
I'm ready for a motion.
I move that the board of directors select McPherson and Jacobson as the search firm for the superintendent search. Second.
It's been moved by Director Allen, seconded by Director Lopez, that the board of directors select McPherson Jacobson as the search firm for the superintendent search. Is there any further discussion? Rose, can you please call the roll?
Lisa Allen,
Aye.
Erica Lopez,
Aye.
Patrick McGuire,
Aye.
Tony Ford,
Aye.
Nancy Thomas. Aye. Mark Watson.
Aye, motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate that. Rose, you will notify all of the applicants. I very much appreciate everybody taking all the time for all this. With that,
Good to give these to us.
if you wrote stuff down, yes, it's part of the public record and you have to give them to Rose. Anybody want board time? Do you have any?
No.
No,
Thank you, yeah, we're done.
I was the motion carried. All right, thank you, Patrick, Monique. I think it's probably pretty late where you are. Thank you for staying with us. Thank you, everybody, for coming out.
Thank you. Happy holidays, everybody.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Yep. Merry Christmas.